Hello, everyone. Michael Jordan fans are the best. And today, we've got a great episode for you. We're going to be talking about who is the second greatest of all time because everyone knows it's Michael Jordan. But first, before we get into that, let's welcome the panel. And there's somebody conspicuously missing right now, which is Hoop God. He should be back in soon, but typical Hoop God has some technical difficulties. Um, but uh, but yeah, let's welcome the panel. Robin, how are you doing today?
You know how I'm doing, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to everybody on the panel, man. I am honored to be here. Shout out to my man Johnny Arnett. You guys know the deal, man. You know Sports and Fitness Ranch. You know how we're gonna get it done today, man. I'm interested to see what you guys got to say in the comments, man. Let's roll.
Nick, how you doing today? NMB Sports.
I'm doing good, man. I think this might be our most contentious episode yet, so it's going to be interesting to see how it goes.
All right, and we got Jay Scap Attack. How are you today, sir?
What's up, Dart? What's up, panel? What's up, Scap Attackers? Welcome in. And I just want to real quick. Johnny, I've never seen you before, and I didn't see your little super when you welcomed me when we were off cam. So I just want to say this is the first time I've seen you actually, but I'm aware of your work, and it's a pleasure to have you on to share some YouTube screen time with you.
Yeah, for sure.
And then welcome special guest Johnny Arnett. How are you today, sir?
I'm good, man. It's good to meet all of you. Scap, thank you for that. It's good to meet you. Your channel's hilarious, man. You're growing at a fast rate, and people love your stuff. So it's good to see it. Y'all growing at a fast rate. I watched the last two podcasts of this in their entirety, and I had so much fun watching you guys go at it. And so, yeah, excited to be a part of it. That is my beautiful wife in the chat, by the way. And so she's there supporting, so I appreciate it.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Then we've got, sorry, I lost the thing. We've got AOH. How are you today, sir?
Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. I may not articulate terribly well today because I deserve this. It's going to be one of those Sunday fun days.
Yeah, cigarettes. You know.
That is not a cigarette.
I was about to say, come on, Dart.
This is
self-medication.
Rated G for everyone. This show.
He's in California.
Anyway. And then we got Hoop God. How are you today, sir?
I'm still dealing with these technical difficulties, but good afternoon, panel. Y'all know my slogan, man. It's imperative that we do what? Destroy these narratives.
Are you the oldest person on the panel, Hoop God? Or do you just keep pretending that you are with your technical difficulties?
I would say in an alternate reality, I'm the oldest on the
panel. All right. Well, let's get right into it. Robin, who is the second greatest NBA player of all time and why?
Well, listen, I just want to start this off by saying that my top 10 list is way different than most people's top 10 lists. And my reasoning for my top 10 list is much different than a lot of other people's top 10 lists. Most time people traditionally will talk about this player is better than that player, or this player is greater than this player, and they rank a traditional 1 through 10. But for me, and I've told this many, many times, Nick, you guys know, Dar, you guys know, it's about who's worthy to be in that conversation. So for me, I have Michael Jordan, number one. I've told you guys this last week. I've never heard an argument, not one argument that I think is sound for anyone above Michael Jordan. That's me. So when we think about those things, and I talk about a 1 through 10, and I have a number 2 player, for me, it's fluid. These guys that are in the top 10 for me are worthy to be in the conversation. They're worthy enough to be argued against each other. For me, Michael Jordan's the only player that doesn't really have an argument against him being the greatest of all time. People can say what they want. I've never heard an argument. I've never heard one that makes any sense anyways. So if we think about that reality, for me, number 2 all time is not necessarily a strict number 2. Maybe, this guy could be argued against somebody else. So I'm going to go with Wilt Chamberlain. Now, one of the things that really, hit home with me as it relates to Wilt Chamberlain. No, I never watched Wilt Chamberlain play. I'm 43 years old, man. So let's be real here. You study the game. You learn from people. You watch film. You try to take in what you can. And what do? You listen to the people who know more than you do, right? And you take what they say, and then you get your opinions based off of that stuff. So when I think about Wilt Chamberlain, and I think about him when I was growing up, him being mentioned, what I remember is whatever Michael Jordan was doing on the basketball court as far as scoring the basketball goes, it was always an asterisk there. And underneath it would say, after the merger. That's how they always qualified against Wilt Chamberlain. They do this to this day. How many times have you seen some weird stat pop up? and they exclude Wilt Chamberlain out of it by what do? After the merger, they'll say, right? Or I remember oftentimes Michael Jordan having all these 40, 50-point games, doing this, doing that. And then they would also have a list of all these players. Michael Jordan would be at the top, and then there would be an asterisk, and it would say Wilt Chamberlain, blah, 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 because it was unreachable. It was in another level. Now, the key for me, that's not why I have a number 2. The key for me is this. When you think about Wilt Chamberlain, to me, he's really the only player in NBA's history that was really not allowed to use his gifts, what he could do on the basketball court. So let's think about Shaquille O'Neal in the early 2000s, the way he was able to play that game, banging into guys, using his what? His physical status. When you hear people talk about Shaquille O'Neal, the most dominant player of all time, not even close. He might be the most physically dominant player of all time, no doubt, but he ain't the most dominant. He's nowhere near the level of dominance of a Michael Jordan or a Wilt Chamberlain. So when you think about Wilt Chamberlain, he was never allowed to use his physical strength, his size at an advantage. Also, we think about the way the game was played in the 60s, right? And in the 50s and the 60s, they were the defenders, they had the advantage, the defensive players. They were allowed to put 2 hands on you, all these things, man. So for me, Wilt Chamberlain could have been a lot greater, and he accomplished a lot of things in his career, even though he was never allowed to use his physical strength and his physical imposition against the players back in them days, man.
All right, Nick, what do you got to say? Or if anyone wants to say anything to what Robin said, you can for a minute.
I'll just go.
AOH, you're muted.
Sorry, okay. There's some great videos out there that show how the rules changed over time, and any sort of aggressiveness by the offensive player was an offensive foul back then. I think about how Wilt Chamberlain, with those long arms, supposedly benched 500 or 600 pounds. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around what he could have done if he had adopted a non-finesse game or been allowed to adopt a non-finesse game. So, yeah, it's unfortunate to me that we have to worry about who is the greatest based on different rule sets. It makes the entire conversation unfair. I would like to have seen every player from every era play by the same rules so that we could actually have an accurate measurement.
Hey, I just want to say something real quick, man. I'm not trying to take up any more time here, man. I see some fools already in the comment section. Listen, once again,
Don't acknowledge them, God damn it!
Yo, AOH, this is why I'm here, man. Let me do what I do.
Make them pay. Make them pay.
Real quick. When people keep trying to talk about Wilt Chamberlain playing against 6'2" guys and all these short guys, please, listen, we're going to get into it, but just stop.
All right. Nick, who is the second greatest of all time to you, and why?
Yeah, so I just had up my debate with Hoop God, right? And essentially, I don't want to be too redundant, but I have objectively, right, if I remove my gut instinct, my sort of intuition, what have you, and I just be as honest as possible about who has the greatest claim. I've always said MJ has the best resume. He has the best aura. He just dominated in such a way, right, in a certain time that I just think he had in his prime and his peak, right, his run was just so great. He's number one, right? So I've always said objectively, Jordan has the best argument. I just don't see any way around it, right? Statistically, legacy, winning, MVPs, right? All that stuff. It just is what it is. Subjectively, if I'm just watching game film, right? If I'm just watching the game, Larry Bird has always stuck out to me as the most complete player that did the most things at a high level. For my money that I've seen or I've researched or looked into, or just watching the game, right? That's always been my number 2. But something Robin said that I kind of want to say, it's not a hard list, right? So because I was kind of thinking about this, right? And I also think there's several ways you can kind of look at this, right? I think, legacy and winning wise and being the heart of a team, you can argue Bill Russell. Statistically and metric wise, you could argue Wilt Chamberlain. In terms of being the second coming of Jordan and the closest thing we've seen to that, you could argue Kobe, right? There's just so many ways you could go about this. But for my money, in my opinion, I think Bird played the game and did the most things well, and the intangibles, right? The ice water in his veins, the chip on his shoulder. He was a team player. He could do it all, right? I mean, I've never seen a guy, I think I said this in my debate, the one thing that really sticks out to me about Bird is you look at guys now who get stats, and guys like LeBron and even Jordan to an extent, right? And they have the ball in their hand for maybe 10 plus seconds during a shot clock, or they're obviously getting the ball, and that's where we start. I've never seen a guy off ball and move around and just do things in such a way where the defense is just constantly aware of him. And in a split second, by him moving off the ball and knowing where everyone is, he's still controlling the defense in a way that I've just always found really incredible, right? So, I think he could do the most things well at a high level. As I've always said, Bob Costas at his retirement, right? Only a handful of players have excelled in every facet of the game, right? And Larry Bird was one of them. So that's largely my argument for Bird being the second greatest of all time.
All right. Does anyone want to respond to Nick? Otherwise, I'd like to.
Go ahead, Dart.
All right. For me, I'm gonna make some enemies here. I think I think Larry Bird should be considered one of the greatest players of all time.
Watch
But
your mouth,
I personally think he's wildly overappreciated.
Larry Bird.
Wildly overappreciated.
I'm walking off the set.
I still think he's considerable for a top 10 player of all time, and he's still one of the greatest players of all time, one of the most iconic players of all time. But he lost more than his contemporary against Magic Johnson. He still had arguably the greatest front line of all time with the Parrish, Kevin McHale, and him there. And he never was statistically dominant over everyone in the league. He won 3 times. He won 3 MVPs. But I think that a lot of people go, and if you look at the competition that he even faced, wasn't the biggest winner, wasn't the most statistically dominant. He's arguably the most iconic, but he's right up there with Magic Johnson.
Real quick, I just want to say, again, if you look at the East at that time, the East was totally stacked compared to the West. It was a total flip of what we've kind of seen in our lifetimes or recent memories since MJ. And then also, in my opinion, right, I think that the Lakers had a little bit more talent overall than the Celtics. I'm not going to say a lot. They both were loaded, right, just how it was at the time. But yeah, I've always considered Bird better than Magic. I think he did more things well than Magic. Again, he maybe did not win as much as the Lakers. I think the Lakers had a little bit of a better, easier path to the finals than the East. And I also think, again, you mentioned the 3 straight MVPs, right? When they were humming and clicking, Larry Bird was the best player for a while there. And I think again, you also bring the intangibles. I think also that's the part of it. But I think the 3 straight MVPs and the 50, 40, 90 and all that stuff, I think Bird is I just think he encapsulates the feeling of basketball to me in many ways. But I think some of the things you said are valid, but I think in context, I think the East was a murderer's row back then compared to the West at the time.
Nick, I had something about your first statement. As a Bay Area guy, I got to pose this out there. You talked about a guy who was constantly running around, and the team had to worry about him even when he doesn't have the ball.
Curry,
Did
absolutely.
you give Curry some
yeah, Miller and Ray Allen, absolutely.
Absolutely. Steph
but
Curry, without a doubt.
Bird off the ball with his passing, right, and other things off the ball, right, was why he was also a threat too. Yeah, absolutely. Shooters that are running baseline screens and things like that, absolutely, right. Like you could bring up Miller and Ray Allen and other guys like that as well.
They don't got the IQ of Larry Bird, man.
Hey Nick, not to digress. Everything that you said is the reason why I have Larry all time. Not to mention he beat Michael Jordan, right? They love to say that, but that's why I have Bird as the greatest small forward of all time.
I just want to touch on something what Nick said about the 50, 40, 90 thing. I've talked about this on my channel. I want people to understand something, man. In the 80s and 90s, the guys that I grew up watching, they would not necessarily know that they were doing these things. Larry Bird wasn't going back home and be like, yo, I was 50, 40, 90 this season, man. These guys were doing this in the course of winning, in the course of greatness. It's a far reach from what we see now, where guys are constantly worried about their stats. They're worried about these things. So they'll play the game based off of that reality. Larry Bird's 50, 40, 90s and the things that he was accomplishing on the basketball court, he wasn't looking into doing this stuff. Those are the things that he did, man. So once again, Dart, listen, man, don't make us look bad out here by saying that Larry Bird overappreciated, man. We're going to lose all credibility out here, man. We must stand on these things. Larry Bird, like I said, man, to me is easily one of the greatest players of all time, top 10, easily. He's in my top 5, Larry Bird. And some of the things that you said, Dart, or may be true. But let's think about this when you talked about, the era or things of that nature, man. Larry Bird, on the team he played on, his loss to Magic Johnson. Larry Bird, like he said, in the Eastern Conference, was playing against some of the most stacked players at his position. He's going against young Dominique Wilkins. He's going against Dr. J. He's going against Bernard King. He's going against a lot of these great players, not to mention the Adrian Dantleys, the Alex English, some of these other great small forwards that he's going against, man. This dude was literally battling against guys like Dennis Rodman. You know what I'm saying? So much respect to Larry Bird.
All right.
Hey, and I want to.
Hey.
Yeah, I want to.
All right. Last one, Hoop God.
Okay, yeah, I want to add something that Rex informed me, and I didn't know this, but it follows Sports and Fitness Rand's point. I didn't realize in the 1980s that the basketball was like, I think Rex said from 30 to 31 inches, and it's no coincidence in 1984 when they switched to the 29, I think it's like 29.2 or 0.1, the one that they're playing with to this day. That's when Larry Bird's efficiency started to go up. Why? It's a smaller basketball. And his first coach was like, he spoke against shooting the 3-ball versus Casey Jones, who was more open to it. So Larry Bird didn't grow up with the 3-point ball. He literally learned on the fly and became the first 50, 40, 90 guy, which I feel is very significant.
All right.
Let me not to dogpile on you, but I got to touch on this Bird thing real quick. I'm sorry, you started this. Okay. Now, to me, Larry Bird is in the argument. I think I'd pick him as the most, that's not necessarily my GOAT. He's not my GOAT, but he's the most complete basketball player the game has ever seen. Because when you look at everything he did, he was a top 10, arguably, shooter in the history of the NBA. He was a fantastic scorer, averaging 25 to 30 points per game throughout his career. I believe it was a 5-season stretch. It was a 5-season stretch from 1984 to 1988. If you take that 5-season stretch, he had 50, 40, 90 percentages. So he was efficient, he was a scorer, and he was a great 3-point shooter. He's also one of the greatest rebounders of all time when you look at position. He averaged 10 rebounds per game as a small forward. Now, he did start at power forward early in his career, but 10 rebounds a game. He's among the all-time leaders. And even the NBA Finals against freaking Moses Malone, he was averaging 15 rebounds a game. Nobody appreciates that. So you got his rebounds, you got his scoring. How about his passing? He was so overlooked as a passer because everybody was paying attention with Magic Johnson. They were so enamored with what he was doing on the court that they weren't appreciating Bird's vision. So you got passing in there. He's arguably top 10 on that. And then you look at his defense. He's so underrated defensively, has 3 all-defense team selections. He was actually a runner-up in the first year that they had the Defensive Player of the Year award. He was either second or third. Correct me if I'm wrong. Second or third in the DPOY race. He has everything. Tell me what Larry Bird sucked at, and you'll embarrass yourself. There's nothing. He's arguably the most complete player in the history of the game. The thing that holds him back to me is the back issues. He just didn't do it as long as many other guys. But if you look at everything he did, he's right up there.
All right, Jay, since everyone else took a shot at me, would you like to have a minute to take a shot at me?
So I also have Bird above Magic in my rankings head to head against them. I have Bird in my top 5 all time. I think his peak is arguably one of the 3 to 4 best peaks we've ever seen. Longevity is certainly the one thing that kind of holds him back. But Magic, remember, he only played 12 full seasons as well. So like the longevity thing isn't really chiming in for Magic. The only one advantage really, and look, I am a rings guy. I do value winning in championships. The only thing that maybe you can give Magic the check on is that he won the 5 championships to Bird's 3. But again, it's been mentioned in here, the gauntlet of the Eastern Conference at that stage, it was unparalleled compared to the West at the time. Go and check out Magic Johnson's his pathways to get into the NBA Finals, and he had 3 or 4 of the easiest runs in NBA history to get into an NBA Finals. When you look at the teams he faced during his conference run-up, while Bird was playing a murderer's row in the East. And then finally, look, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar might not be mentioned by anybody here, but he is arguably the second best player ever. He has a case at least. And that guy was on Magic's team for all of the rings. And look, James Worthy is a top 50 all-time player. He had him too. So I know Bird had a robust supporting cast, but in my estimation, the Showtime 80s Lakers are the greatest like team assembled on paper when you really look at everything that roster had.
Yeah, and I will say I think Kareem on paper, kind of like on paper, I think Kareem might be probably the next best argument on paper. From high school to when he retired, like really nothing he didn't do or win at a high level.
Let's just moving forward, let's have everyone do a 1-minute response to whoever says somebody second. I think that'll flow better. But I also want to defend myself real fast, just real quickly. Is that for me, I look at stats because they vary over time. The 80s stats look different than the 90s or the 60s or the 50s and 40s. To me, when I look at 15 rebounds a game or the scoring, I think that Larry Bird is one of the best players of all time, and I think he's a top 10 greatest player of all time. You know, shoot me for it, I guess. But just to the point of it is that, the point of it is I think he's an all-time great. I just don't think he's close to the GOAT. Anyway, Jay, who is the second greatest player of all time and why?
Well, Dart, we're talking second because we all agree Michael Jordan is one, and that's because for all intents and purposes, he has a perfect resume. He really has no flaw. Every other player in NBA history, and while a handful do provide us with great cases, they all also have flaws. So you can kind of pick and critique at every case other than Jordan in my estimation. And what we're doing right now in this at least opening segment is making our case. Therefore, the reason I think it's Kobe, and it's easily Kobe, is because for over a 10-year span of his time in the NBA at his prime, over a 10-year span, he was by far the best offensive weapon in basketball. Not just the best contemporary weapon, arguably the greatest offensive player ever. To me, I put Jordan, Wilt, and Kobe. Those are the only three names in consideration for my money. But when you look at what Kobe did at the time that he did it, for Kobe's entire 20-year span, average nightly NBA scoring was 97 points per game. When, just to put that in context, it was a 114 points per game this year and last year. That's where, and it's been on that upward trajectory since basically around 2015-ish. So basically right when Kobe was trailing off at the end of his career, we started ramping up to 1960s like rate and pace of play. So not only was the pace of play substantially diminished in Kobe's 20 years, but you also had guys that just had a willing desire to defend at levels that just don't exist in today's basketball. Despite all that, Kobe Bryant is still top 3 all time in most 40, 50, and 60-point games. So we're talking about, again, a top 3 all-time historical scorer who had 12 All-NBA defensive team selections, 9 first-team selections, which is tied for most ever with Kevin Garnett, Gary Payton, and Michael Jordan. So we're talking about an elite full-court player that did it on both ends for an extraordinarily long stretch of time. Yes, his peak did not quite extend as long as like maybe Kareem or LeBron. He didn't have the longevity because he popped his Achilles at 34 years of age. But for about a 13 to 14 year span, this guy was the best offensive threat possibly in league history, playing elite, like league best level defense for the guard position. Oh, and he went to 7 finals, won 5 of them. And the 2 that he won back-to-back in 9 and 10 are, for my money, the most challenging multi-year run in league history. So for those reasons, number 2 for me will likely always be Kobe Bean Bryant.
Real fast, I just want to address a couple things that were said in the chat. So I took the universal chat down, the overlay down, because slurs that were being put into the chat. I just don't think it's, fair for people to see. It sucks that people are like that, but I don't want certain words, they're nasty. So I'm not going to have them on the screen. And then for the super chats, it's something that I meant to discuss with you guys, but there's so many super chats that come in when the show is growing that I got to think of an arbitrary number to go push up where we stop the show. Because otherwise, if we stop the show for every super chat, we wouldn't have a show. It would be a super chat show. So let's just say we'll stop. If somebody wants to super chat somebody for $15, we'll stop the show and we'll have whoever you super chat address it real fast. Otherwise, we will flash it on the screen as I have been doing. But Johnny, what do you have to say about Kobe being number 2 for a minute?
I think, all right. So people on my channel know that when it comes to Kobe, I am wildly biased. I find ways to shoehorn him into every video I ever mention with like a motivational Kobe quote, or here's what Kobe said about his opinion on something. So I love Kobe. Let me say that. I think Kobe has one of the biggest variations in how you should rank him based on whether or not you're looking at his peak or whether or not you're looking at his entire career. Because Kobe's peak, I'm with Scap on that. He's one of the, select few most impressive players in the history of the game. I mean, making first team all defense while averaging 35.4 points per game in 06 during a time when they're averaging 97 points per game. I mean, that's ridiculous. Outscoring a team through 3 quarters all by himself single-handedly, a team that, by the way, went on to the NBA Finals and was ranked 7th that year in defensive rating. That's insane. And then he didn't play that 4th quarter and scored 81 later on. Kobe was a cheat code. I don't argue against that. But I will say this. Kobe had some ugly moments to his career, and maybe even Scap will admit this. Like the last 3 or 4 years, do we count that against Kobe? Because that was rough. His body was breaking down. He tore his rotator cuff. He busted his kneecap. Obviously, there was the Achilles. He was great up until the Achilles. But those few years after that, he was the most inefficient shooter in the entire league. And it's like, I love Kobe. So part of me just wants to like disregard that. But that is pretty brutal. The other thing that I think that people usually don't mention is if you're going to hold the 2011 finals against LeBron James, which you should. I mean, that was a stain on his legacy for sure. But if you're going to do that, you should probably do the same thing to a certain degree for Kobe for the 2004 NBA Finals. I watched that finals live, and as I was watching it, before I could ever hear what anyone was saying or the narratives, I felt like Kobe's trying to go for the finals MVP, and he's shooting us in the foot. Like, as a Lakers fan, I was watching that.
Johnny, it's supposed to be a minute, so.
My bad. But yes, I was going to mention the stats, but you get it. So anyway, go ahead, Scott.
We'll go back to Kobe otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, definitively the last 3 years, in my estimation, look, Kobe was pushing in his age 34 season. That was his 17th season, though. At that point, I think he ruptured the Achilles with 3 or 4 games remaining in the regular season. He ended up that year, Kobe Bryant in his 17th season, scored more points than LeBron James that year, and averaged more points per game than LeBron James that year, in a year that LeBron James won league MVP at the age of 28. So that's what level Kobe was still playing in his 17th season. But look, after the Achilles rupture, he never got back. He played 6 games, I think, the following year, like 19 games the next year, and then he limped through 60-some games for his final season before he retired. So yeah, I don't count those last 3 years. But when you look at the 17 seasons aren't a small sample size. Like if you take the year from when Kobe became a starter in his second or third year to the Achilles rupture, he played more games than he played more games than Michael Jordan, than Larry Bird, than Magic Johnson. Like that wasn't a small sample size, what we did see before the Achilles rupture. I still think it was enough to get Kobe over every other player ever other than Jordan. And yes, I admit the 2004 and Kobe had other stains, other negatives. That's why I started my dissertation on Kobe with the fact that everybody has things that you can pick and choose against them. Kobe is no different. But to me, Kobe did enough otherwise to clear everybody else other than Michael.
Good take.
AOH, what do you got to say?
I don't care. I don't. I get no pleasure sitting around trying to move pieces around and figure out who is higher on my list. I either liked them and enjoyed watching them or I didn't. I really don't care. And I thought about like acting like a basketball guru and coming up with all my stats about why I chose. And you know what? I don't want to be a conformist puppet because this is what the media has done. They have told us that it should be important to us. And that's why we're having these ridiculous conversations about LeBron James. LeBron James doesn't deserve to be in the conversation at all. I mean, he's an embarrassment to the sport. He's an embarrassment to adult men. You can't have someone like that in a GOAT debate unless The media told you that it was a debate to have. I
Hey,
mean,
wait, this is supposed to be about Kobe.
no, it's not. You're supposed to be asking me about the top people.
No,
I
no,
never even got to say my opening line.
Oh no, it was supposed to be for you about responding to Scap about Kobe.
Oh man, I mean,
I just
Scap,
thought, you know what?
Do you know by now that I wasn't a Kobe fan? I appreciate him as a competitor, miles ahead of LeBron James, but while Kobe was playing, I rooted against him. So I had a very, very scrutinous eye on him, which probably was, to an extent made me try not to see the good things too, admittedly. I appreciate Kobe for the way Kobe played. And the more we deal with these divas now, the more we appreciate everybody before. Like, I appreciate Kobe more now than I ever would have if these guys weren't such embarrassments. We all appreciate Jordan even more because of the way these guys act now. And we were talking about Bird. And you know what? I think that the GOAT debate is changing for some of us nostalgic guys to how people compose themselves more so than whether or not they had the most rebounds, the most assists, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, Bird, one of the greatest things about Bird was his composure. I mean, man, that guy was not afraid. He was not afraid. And that he's not a physically intimidating looking man. And he's going out there against these athletes and telling them what he's going to do to them. And then he does it. I mean, that is inspirational. That's worth telling stories about. And for those reasons, I would move people up a list even more than their stats or their championships. By the way, it was really interesting, Johnny Arnett, that you mentioned people were so obsessed with Magic's passing that they didn't really acknowledge Bird's. Is that true? I mean, maybe it was downplayed, but one of the things I remember the most about Bird was his nutty passing, his court vision. If people aren't crediting Bird for his passing, I'll be... Huh?
You were old enough to see it, though, right?
Well, but I feel like it was in documentaries and Larry Bird specials. I don't know. What, you guys really don't think about Larry Bird and his passing?
I do.
Yeah.
If Magic wasn't there, he'd be the best passer in the league. Let me put it that way. It's kind of like the same way where people might not think as positively of Kobe because of the existence of Michael Jordan. I'm not downplaying his passing ability. I'm just saying he doesn't get to put that on his resume, that he was the best passer in the league or something like that because everybody was so enamored by Magic. But again, that's through the eye test. I'm not going to say that's an objective truth. That was my impression. That was my dad's impression. So
Bird is the greatest passing forward ever out of all the forwards. I haven't seen one that could pass better than him.
Hoop God, what do you got? Hoop God, I know you got that you may have a similar take, but do you want to add anything to what Scap said?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. So when you actually go back and look at Kobe's career, you see that it intertwined with Michael Jordan and then also LeBron James. And I don't honestly think we didn't really get a chance to see Kobe like either benefit from LeBron's era or benefit from the MJ era. And the reason why I'm saying that is because coming up as a youngster, of course, we know he had to play behind who? Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones. So that's where I believe that work ethic that was already in him, it just got like catapulted up to an astonishing level because he knew he had to outwork those guys to ultimately prove himself. And then if you get to the 2000 finals, like, not saying anybody in this panel said this, but they always speak on his efficiency. I'm like, okay, well, let's factor this into the equation. How would you shoot the ball on a bummed ankle that a team strategically targeted you to try to take you out of the series? But I said, I find it very astonishing that they just ignored that he shot 80% from the field in that game 4 when Shaq fouled out and he just tapped it on the side and said, hey, don't worry about it. I got you, big fella. It's like that unshakable confidence that we didn't get to see enough on full display. Fast forward, 2013, now we're in the analytical era. Everybody's shooting the long ball. Well, Kobe Bryant's effective field goal percentage was 50.4 before he got injured. So that's why when you go back and you just actually get the research and the facts, I believe Kobe would have did just fine in the LeBron era with more time, more training, and all the amenities that LeBron and everybody in his era has benefited from. Sorry, I went over on that. Right. Try to keep it within 60 seconds. I'm sorry.
Robin, you got anything to add about Kobe?
Of course I do, man. While I was talking, I'm going to say something too. Listen, I appreciate what Scap is saying, man. I got Kobe Bryant third all time on my list, man. So obviously I respect what Kobe Bryant did, man. And everything that Scab said was on the money, man. And I listened to what you guys added and, maybe, pushed back against. But the thing with Kobe Bryant, to me, that it's like one of these things. I feel like Kobe Bryant, he's being appreciated more. And a lot of people try to say, oh, since Kobe Bryant died, all of a sudden he's in the GOAT debate. That's not the case here. What you appreciate more, why you appreciate Kobe Bryant more, is what Hukai was alluding to, man. Look at the nonsense we're witnessing over the last 10 seasons in the NBA, man. It's an absolute joke, man. So once again, you start to appreciate what? The guys from the past eras now. What do you notice right now? Everyone taking LeBron James out their top 5 all of a sudden, or the people making moves. Like you said, maybe AOH, you said maybe you would move a guy up or something based off of how you remembered him, right? It's how you remember that they played the game, how they made you feel. And in that regard, Kobe Bryant, man, can't really be matched by anybody as far as the competitive fire that he showed, the effort he gave. Like you said, Scab, he ran himself physically into the ground. Physically ran himself into the ground. Why? Because he was a competitor trying to win, man. My biggest knock on Kobe Bryant, why I would say he would never be close to a Michael Jordan, or he has no argument for Michael Jordan, is when we think about the two-way play. And I agree with Scab. I think it's Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, maybe Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kobe Bryant. These are really the greatest two-way plays you can argue of all time, man. And for me, if we think about Kobe Bryant, let's put Kobe Bryant in the 90s, for example, right? We know he came in late. Let's put Kobe Bryant in the NBA, 1990 with Michael Jordan.
Robin, can you
Is
wrap
Kobe
it up,
Bryant going to
please?
make all those defensive first teams against Michael Jordan? No, he won't, man. But much respect for Kobe Bryant being 2. I don't see any problem with that.
All right, Nick, what do you got to say?
Yeah, I said this in the debate with Hoop God as well. The Kobe curse, right? I kind of mentioned it in the opening. Is he is the second coming, or the best thing we've seen since Jordan in terms of that skill set or that kind of aura, especially at the shooting guard position. And so I think, whether subconsciously or not, I think people go, well, I already have the best model in MJ as the GOAT, right? So I might put a center at number 2 or someone who did something else. I think that's kind of what people do. And so where Kobe ranks in their all-time list, I think sometimes he gets bumped down when people start thinking like that. But that's kind of my opinion, is the Kobe curse, is he'll just never get out of the shadow of Jordan. And that's just kind of what it is, And unfortunately, I think, like I said, I know I do. I think, well, Jordan's GOAT. Did other people play that position at their position at a higher level compared to Kobe, to Jordan, right? And so I think for that reason, he does get bumped down from time to time.
Yeah, just as a reminder, let's try to keep it to 1 minute. But Scap, do you have anything you want to respond to before Johnny goes and says his piece?
No, we can come back to Kobe, but yeah, I'll leave some time. I'm interested to hear Johnny's argument. So if we want to touch on Kobe, we can. Like I said, guys, I respect pretty much every name that's been brought up so far. I respect. I think there's as many as 7 people that have a case at number 2. So I'm interested to see who that case is going to be for Johnny.
All right, Johnny, who's your number 2 and why?
All right. Well, first I got to establish that my number 1 is Jordan, and I don't think LeBron's ever catching him. I have to say this because now people are saying I work for Clutch just because I dared look at these stats for myself and try to report them honestly. Anyway, Jordan's my go. Second all time. I had it LeBron last time I did a rankings video because I was kind of moving towards the longevity thing. But I feel like longevity is starting to hurt LeBron. Let me save that for later so I can, talk about my 2. My 2 was Wilt. Wilt Chamberlain was my 3 last time. I'm moving him up to 2. And the reason being is because every narrative that people use to discredit Wilt Chamberlain is false. It's objectively false. People say he played against guys who was 6'3". The average center at that time was 6'10" tall. Depending on when you're looking at his career, the average height of the player in the league was either 6'5" or 6'7". He didn't win as much as Bill Russell. Well, that certainly is hard when Bill Russell has the more stacked team loaded with Hall of Famers, and there is no free agency, so his team can't get better. What other GOAT had that working against them where they can't improve their team? My time's up, but I have so much to say.
No, you got 3 minutes on this. You got 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
So
1 minute responses. Yeah.
One of the things people say about Wilt Chamberlain, he dominated smaller competition. He just ran up the court, dunking on smaller guys. That's not even true. He had an incredible finger roll. His fadeaway was filthy. Go look up the footage. He was doing the Dirk fadeaway type style shot, and it was unstoppable way before Dirk was doing that. And as you mentioned, He couldn't just bully guys in the paint due to the rules at the time the same way that Shaquille O'Neal could. And everybody wants to say, well, of course he got nice stats because he played 48 minutes a game. Well, then why isn't everyone doing it? That takes a hell of a lot of stamina to do that. He was just the one guy who could actually pull it off. On top of that, he was one of the greatest rim protectors in the history of the game. And I think just because people just want to disregard his footage, again, like you say, like, or disregard his numbers, since the, you know, the merger and all that sort of things, his numbers are so goofy that people disregard it. Sit with it for a second. Somebody averaged 50 points, 25 rebounds a game while being one of the top 2 best defensive players in the entire league. He was playing against Bill Russell 12 times a season at one point. And people want to say, you didn't have much competition. You ever heard of Walt Bellamy? Like, you ever heard of Nate Thurmond, one of the greatest defensive players of all time? Like, miss me with that. Like, if you can't name the guys he played against, then you shouldn't be able to tell me whether or not you think he has legitimate competition. Anyway, I rest my case.
All right, Scap. Yeah,
I'm gonna try to squeeze this into a minute, and I'm probably gonna open up a can of worms. I've got Wilt in my top 10 undeniably, but I don't have Wilt in my top 5. And I'm not rejecting his stats. I'm not rejecting the premise of his individual dominance. I think he is the most individually dominant player in NBA history. But some of the things I hold against LeBron, I have to hold against Wilt too. And I'm not just a stone cold, like, black and white ring counter. Okay, like, for instance, Hakeem Olajuwon only has 2 rings, but at his peak, Hakeem Olajuwon has a you know, a conversation in my estimation to be, you know, top 3 or 4 all time in terms of peak, and he's a, you know, a fixture in my top 10. But for Wilt, like, you only won 2. I understand the Celtics. I understand what the roster entailed back then. I understand what Russell presented, but you won 2. One of them being with the super mega team of the Lakers, which still has the 2nd highest differential ever, which had Gail Goodrich and the late great Jerry West. That's one of your 2. Like, I just can't. Rant, sports and fitness, I see you foaming at the mouth, so go ahead. But I just, this is my take on Wilt. I'm sorry. Like, he's the most dominant individual, but he's not going above other guys that were more prolific winners.
All right. Robin, you want to go, since it looks like you got something on the tip of your tongue?
Yeah, well, listen, man, I love you, Scott, man. I really do. I really enjoyed this stuff on Sunday with you guys, man. I'm learning a lot. Listen, this is the thing with Wilt Chamberlain, and Johnny, you said a lot of the same things that I started off this, you know, live talking about Wilt Chamberlain about, man. The winning. Let's just knock this winning thing out the way. Can someone name me the other player that was winning in the 60s? I'm waiting for someone. I keep hearing Wilt Chamberlain didn't win. And I'm not saying you, Scott. I'm not saying you, man. But when people like Johnny was saying these narratives, who the hell else was winning? Literally, Wilt Chamberlain and Bob Pettit are the only dudes to win during the Bill Russell's run. Also, Wilt Chamberlain's the only player to beat Bill Russell after winning 8 in a row. He was the only team that could beat them. Was Wilt Chamberlain's team. It doesn't add up to me. You mentioned the Lakers and the stacked players that they had. They were playing against the New York Knicks with like 6 Hall of Famers on it, man. They beat great teams to win those titles. They weren't playing against the 2020 Miami Heat. So don't ever put LeBron James and Wilt Chamberlain in the same sentence, Scab. You know better than that, man.
I
All
think,
right.
though,
Yeah.
with just real quick, this won't take a minute. With LeBron, I do hear from the jock sniffers or the Bron sexuals or whatever you want to hear. I do hear some excuses flying around that, like, quite frankly, like, yes, some of the excuse, like the KD Golden State Warriors team, like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe you shouldn't have beaten those teams, LeBron, but like, you played 21 years, like, you had other opportunities to win other championships. Otherwise, in my estimation, like, if we're talking 2nd all-time greatest player ever, like, the individually most dominant player ever, like, in my opinion, should have found a way to slide more than 2 championships in throughout the course of his entire career. And that's just my opinion.
Nick, what do you got to say?
Yeah, unfortunately, the winning is held against Wilt a little bit there. I mean, that's probably why I don't have him a little higher. I said in the beginning, statistically speaking, Wilt is got to be next in line, right? It's just, you know, his playoff numbers dip a little bit. Again, I think the postseason success, it's just, it's like Jerry West, right? If Jerry West wins, 2-3 more rings, he gets propelled into top 20, top 15 on everyone's list, right? So it's just unfortunate, right? It's just kind of the way it is. But statistically speaking, metrics on paper, Wilt Chamberlain is an absolute monster. I've always called him the biggest freak the NBA has ever seen. And don't forget, Wilt Chamberlain at 7 foot, whatever he was, benched 400 or 500 pounds, ran a 10-second 100-meter dash at Kansas. Like, these guys were athletes. I agree with Johnny on the whole athlete thing, right? Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain ran track, and they were considered. I mean, Bill Russell one time was one of the best in the world, and you got Wilt Chamberlain out here 7'2", running 10-second 100-meter dashes. Like, that is just a scary proposal to have to think about and deal with.
So I wanted to add about the Wilt Chamberlain thing. So he's the most statistically dominant player of all time. But to what Scap is saying, his entire career he had great teams. They just weren't able to get over the edge of the Boston Celtics. On the Philadelphia Warriors, he had Paul Arizin, he had Tom Gola. He went on the 76ers, he had Billy Cunningham, Hal Greer. And then he went to the Lakers with Jerry West and Gail Goodrich. To say that the teams the teams were just different. And Bill Russell, foreshadowing alert, is my second greatest of all time. So I'll go with that into more length later. But to me, Wilt is he is, period, the most statistically dominant player of all time. It's not even close. Second is Michael Jordan. But to the point of it is that Hoop God, just wait a second, okay? Yeah, the whole point of it is that sorry, I got distracted. But is that, yeah, Wilt Chamberlain is great, but he's got a lot of black marks on his resume. Anyway, Hoop God, what do you got to say about this?
Okay, so just to echo what Sports and Fitness Rand said, I mean, yeah, when you look at the numbers, and Johnny Arnett as well. Now, Wilt was a freak of nature. I mean, he put up numbers to see again, so I give him that. But my biggest knock is the drop off in the playoffs. Now, granted, not everybody's going to be consistent, but if you go from 30 points per game down to 22, well, I got to go back and research. Okay, what went on? I got to get to a conclusion, like, what happened here. Now, I'm only quoting what his teammates said. This was the great Jerry West. He said, I don't want to rap Wilt because he does feel like he was a phenomenally great player. He said, but Wilt would not adjust to you. You had to adjust to him. So once I go back and I do research.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing that has a lot of validity there. It's his style of play. I get it. And yes, Wilt was individually phenomenal with the fadeaway. I went and saw that. That's true. Arnold Schwarzenegger confirmed that he bench pressed 500 pounds. I mean, yeah, the guy just overall.
I can't hear you guys.
I do believe he's the most dominant. Oh, yes, y'all can't hear me?
He can't. I can hear everything. I think it's just on your end, Robin.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I'm gonna just wrap it up. Like, that's my biggest knock, Wilt. It's the drop off in playoff production. If it was 1 or 2 points, that's fine. But from 30 points to 22, that's an 8-point drop off, and I cannot overlook that.
All right, AOH has left. It was his turn. He's trying to move around, but Johnny, do you have anything you want to say more before we get AOH's opinion? Do you have anything you want to rebut to any of these things?
I mean, we can get to AOH. I got plenty of videos on Wilt. I just think that, and I just dropped it in the chat, I think the effect of no free agency is way too overlooked. I mean, just imagine certain situations where Michael Jordan comes into the league, and we all know the history of it. We all know that the reason the Celtics beat them those 2 years in a row in the playoffs is because they had the much better team. Like, MJ didn't have the support that Bird had. He didn't have McHale, Parrish, Danny Ainge, Dennis Johnson. He didn't have all those guys. But imagine if it stayed that way. And I'm not saying that level of Bull supporting cast is what Wilt had. Wilt had quality teammates, but it was not on the level of the Boston Celtics with Bob Cousy, Sam Jones, Bailey Howell, John Havlicek. It's just, they were stacked. So that's my opinion on it.
All right. It was supposed to be AOH's turn, but he left, so he should be back in a moment. Hoop God, who is your second greatest player of all time and why?
So, just to give my honorable mentions, because I do believe that there are other players who have legitimate cases for number 2, such as the great Magic Johnson, Kareem, Larry Bird, Tim Duncan, so on and so forth. But my number 2, again, is great Kobe Bryant, because I'm looking at his overall impact and record in championship play, high school included. That's why I said Kareem. And then I'm looking at your playoff production and degree of difficulty, versus the comp in the field, which Kobe beat the most 50-win teams, and they were over 80% of those 50-win teams had 50 wins. I'm looking at that as well, the number 1 defenses, and then your great two-way ability. And when I come to that conclusion, I'm looking, Kobe Bryant not only led the league in scoring, being an all-league defender, but he's only the second player besides Michael Jordan to average 30 points per game and still be an all-league defender. And I got this from Scap. He led the entire playoffs in scoring 3 consecutive seasons while being an all-league defender at his position. And then, of course, leading his team to back-to-back championships without a top 75 teammate. Now, yes, I can be objective. 2004, I do hold Kobe Bryant responsible for that, because I felt like there were times where he was being a little bit immature. Yeah, I know him and the Shaq had their whole issues going on, but still, you gotta be able to put that to side and wait for the team. So yes, I will also hold 2004 against Kobe Bryant. Yes, I will. But I also will give 2010. I would say that, to me, made up for 2004 and 2008. Why? Because he played like Larry Bird, to quote what Nick said earlier. It wasn't about his scoring. It was about his playmaking. It was about his defense. It was about, what can I do to help my team, seeing that I'm having an inconsistent shooting percentages. And of course, he had a broken finger. I won't leave that out of the equation. But to see him put on that effort in that Game 7, to go out and get 15 rebounds at a shooting guard, to go out and play great defense on Boston's guards. I mean, if you look at his defensive rating in that series, it was better than the team. He posted a 98 individual net defensive rating, whereas the Lakers as a team were only 101 or 102. So when I see all of that, and then I see how he was the X factor in the 2008 Olympic Dream Team, because they couldn't get the gold. They kept receiving bronze. I'm going to say that again. You don't win the bronze. You receive a bronze medal. There's a reason why Coach K had to go get Kobe Bryant and say, I need you to lead this team. What does Kobe say? Coach, I want to guard the other team's best perimeter player. What is that telling me? Okay, that's the Bill Russell mentality. That's the Michael Jordan mentality. That's that Tim Duncan mentality. How can I help this team win? So when I see how Kobe Bryant sacrifices his offensive game for the impact of the team, I can't ignore that. Not to mention he has 2 scoring titles. Not to mention he has the most points scored as a 2 guard. Not to mention that he also has more all defensive selections over any other guard in NBA history. So that's my reason for having Kobe Bryant number 2. I could go on, but unfortunately, Dart only gave me 3 minutes.
let me just tag on real quick to that 2010 finals that is absolutely ridiculously underappreciated in my estimation. The Lakers played 4 50+ win teams in the playoffs that run. There's only, I believe, 5 teams in NBA history that played 50-win opponents at every stage of a postseason. Kobe was involved in 3 of them. Hakeem was involved in the other one, and then this year's Dallas Mavericks team. But in that 2010 run, the 8 seed that the Lakers played in the first round was the Thunder that had James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Russell Westbrook on it. That was their first round opponent. Kobe then gets all the way into the finals with that aforementioned broken finger against that super team Celtics squad that eliminated MVP LeBron James and forced LeBron to crawl on his hands and knees to Miami. Kobe got that team, and I see people be critical of him for his offense in that. Look, Kobe led both teams by 10 points per game in that 7-game series. He had 10 more points per game than Pau Gasol, 10 more points than the leading scorer on the Celtics with the broken finger and all the things he did defensively and rebounding as well. So I just wanted to add that in on top of what Hoop God said.
All right. Johnny, what do you got to say? What do you got to say about this?
Yeah, so I want to tack on that just Kobe 2010 because I agree. Although I acknowledge the twilight of his career, 2004 NBA Finals, I just want to destroy this myth as you guys talk about this critical. He was 6 of 24 in Game 7 of the NBA Finals because this context is ignored. A lot of young kids never watched that game. Though that rivalry between the Lakers and Celtics was determined by the physicality. We weren't ready for that Celtics team until we got Ron Artest. And it was banging on the boards. We missed Andrew Bynum in 2008. It was physical. The refs put away their whistles in Game 7 of the 2010 NBA Finals. So get this. Yes, Kobe shot 6 of 24, and he had like a bazillion rebounds. But along with that, Paul Pierce was 5 of 15. Ray Allen was 3 of 14. You had Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol was 6 of 16. Metta World Peace was 7 of 18. Andrew Bynum was 1 of 5. And Lamar Odom was 3 of 8. They all shot like crap because it was one of the most physical basketball games ever played in the NBA Finals. Just go back and watch it. And that's because refs put their whistle away. So to put that against Kobe and act like he just totally failed in the moment, if you're going to do that, you got to knock all of those players' legacies for that same reason.
Real quick, I think the final score of that game, I think off the top of my head, was 83-79, I want to say, was the final.
Yep.
And people that bring up the 6 of 24, hey, Kobe led both teams in scoring for that game. He led both teams in scoring in the fourth quarter for that game. He still found a way because Kobe Bryant was a winner. That's why he's my number 2.
And the Lakers were also up when Ron Artest hit the shot, because somehow that keeps getting left out of translation. Like, they weren't down, they were up. And Kobe got doubled, and he did what you do naturally: get the ball to the open man. Ron Artest hits the shots. That's the dagger. So I just wanted to put that in there too.
Hey, wait, what do you got to say about this? I see you working out over there. Kobe.
I can't sit. Kobe again.
Stop asking him.
You don't have to. If you don't want to comment, you don't got to comment. It's just an option.
Well, it's interesting how one of the arguments for LeBron James is centered around his longevity. And I was just thinking, the way that we appreciate people for their character, I'm more tempted to put guys in the GOAT debate that ran themselves into the ground, like a Kobe did, like a Larry Bird did. Michael Jordan tried to, but the guy was inhuman. I mean, arguing with the franchise to come back from an injury, not sleeping, playing golf, and then going and playing. I mean, that guy, I don't know what he's made out of, but he was willing to run himself into the ground. Apparently, Kobe was willing to run himself into the ground. Larry Bird ran himself into the ground and had the grace to say, hey, don't give me that money. I don't deserve it. I'm not going to be able to perform for you. Those guys had shorter careers. I mean, Kobe's was fairly long, but that's better. Show me a warrior fighting his ass off during his time on the battlefield. I don't want to see these guys that fucking tippy toe for 30 goddamn years in the NBA. Why is that something commendable? It's not. Run yourself into the ground. You're a pro athlete. Do the most you can while you can and entertain the people that are paying your salaries. I put those guys above LeBron based on that alone.
Gotcha. For me with Kobe, I don't have him number 2. I've recently put him number 5. But I've had him out of my top 10 before. So again, I'm a Tim Duncan guy. Tim Duncan, after Michael Jordan, was my favorite player growing up. I liked his style, not in respect to it being flashy, but that he was a no BS guy, that he was a great guy, and he didn't have to get in your face about it in respect to it being on camera. But in respect to how great Kobe was, I had him at number 5. And I think the biggest thing that speaks to his greatness is his cultural dominance, his icon that took over the league, and even growing so more after his death. AOH, when you're on a sidebar, if you could mute yourself when you're going away, there's just a lot of clacking and stuff. But long story short is that I think that Kobe's greatness really transcends with his icon, what he was able to provide to the NBA and his entertainment value. Robin, what do you guys say about this?
I'm gonna say about Kobe, man. I love Kobe, man. I ain't got nothing to say. You guys have been knocking it down. What I want to say is I want to rebut some people in the chat. So I said earlier the Knicks had 6 Hall of Famers. I said that, and someone asked me, name the Hall of Famers. I'll name the Hall of Famers for you, man. We have Walt Clyde Frazier, Hall of Famer. You have Willis Reed, Hall of Famer. And Jerry Lucas, Hall of Famer. Earl the Pearl Monroe, Hall of Famer. David Bush and Bill Bradley. That's 6 Hall of Famers right there, man. I named 6 Hall of Famers. You guys don't know the game of basketball, man. You fools in the chats, man. You think I just say things and say them? Remember, I don't write stuff down. I don't pre-record my videos. I don't edit my videos. I know what I'm talking about. I grew up in New York, man. So that's the fact right there. And also, people were trying to tear me in the comments for backing Wilt Chamberlain but not backing LeBron James. Are you kidding me right now? When did Wilt Chamberlain stack a team together and then falter in the NBA Finals? I don't remember him ever doing this. How many times do you see Wilt Chamberlain saying, hey, man, we're going to run my system. Everyone to get around me and fit around me. How many times you seen Wilt Chamberlain flopping around? Because that's the point I was trying to make earlier. Wilt Chamberlain is the only guy in the history of the game. Maybe you could argue George Mikan is the only guy to me that once again was not allowed to use his physical talents and gifts to really dominate. So you mentioned the winning. This is what I'm talking about. If Wilt Chamberlain was allowed to lower his shoulder like Shaquille O'Neal in the 2000s, bang Bill Russell, bang Nate Thurman, destroy all these guys with his physical stature, maybe he would have won more, man. Are you kidding me right now? You guys sound crazy.
All right, Nick, do you have anything to add more to Kobe or?
No, I mean, I kind of already said what I think about Kobe. I mean, I think he was probably the most dominant player, when I was through high school and college, growing up watching the game. So I obviously love Kobe. I mean, I just think he has the curse of being, the second best model after Jordan for what we saw, right? And people might hold that against him consciously or subconsciously, but yeah, in terms of a skill set, I mean, in a warrior, I think like AOH was saying, I mean, the guy was second to none, right? So, I mean, I have him at number 4 for me personally. So he's right up there for me as well.
All right. Do you have anything you want to say about this, Hoop God, in a minute? Any sort of rebuttal or anything?
Yeah, it won't take a minute. It's just I see it's these same old trolls talking about inefficient and 50%. Well, hey, I'll do you one better. Go look up all the high volume scorers who played on the perimeter and tell me which one shot 50% from the field during that time. And just for comparison, the great Ray Allen, and I've never heard anybody say that he was inefficient, yada, yada, yada. Well, guess what his career field goal percentage was? 45.4. Not even a percentage higher than Kobe Bryant. That's why when I see these guys in the comments, I can tell they don't even know the game of basketball. They don't even understand that was the dead ball era, and nobody shot high efficiency outside of Steve Nash, who only attempted 11 to 12 shots per game. Because all the guys who average anywhere from 14 and higher weren't even close to 50%. So I just let them continue to show how much they don't know about the game of basketball.
So I would usually go to AOH, but I have an idea what he's going to say. So I think that's a good last one to do.
Wait,
do you not agree? I think it's a good closer.
No, I have something to pose to Scap. Did you think it was weird that, personally, as someone who had his fill of Kobe, when Kobe died, I thought that they were going to elevate him to God status, and like his death was actually going to help his legend. And they really did kind of sweep him under the rug. It's like, we're not going to even talk about him anymore because of, now he's gone. We don't feel the need to. I thought that was not the direction I thought they were going to go. Did you see that coming?
No, and I think you're right, honestly. It's a good point because there are a lot of dreadful and egregious takes swirling out there about Kobe Bryant that annoy the ever-loving hell out of me. But I do see a lot that, Kobe didn't exist before he died. He wasn't in anyone's, GOAT conversation. He wasn't thought of as a top 2 or 3 player before he died. That's completely false. If anything, you're false. Right. It's gone in the opposite direction. For whatever reason, now people diminish him and tarnish him even more now. So, and that's just one other little critique or negative thing that people can bring up and say, oh, well, it's only because he died, you put him there. It's actually the reverse.
All right. Let me get into my second greatest of all time, which I've already told everyone. It's Bill Russell. To me, I don't think it's close. The next guy I have is George Mikan, but why I have Bill Russell number 2, and just to explain what I look at is to explain greatness, is individual statistical dominance. The most individually statistical dominant person was Wilt Chamberlain. The most dominant winner of all time was Bill Russell, particularly as a leader of a team. And then the most iconic and influential person is Michael Jordan. The total package is Michael Jordan altogether. He's second, third, and 1. All the other guys are in all different locations. George Mikan is another story. I can go. Y'all can jump on me later about George Mikan, but Bill Russell, 11 NBA championships. He went and he influenced rule changes with the offensive basket interference in 1957. He's integral for the entirety of, or he's largely credited for being with the Boston Celtics, integrating what is known as the fast break offense. In my opinion, the greatest offense of all time. Even though it's as simple as just going out in transition and being able to outrun the guy. They won 11 NBA championships in 13 seasons that he played there. He won 4 rebounding titles. Some of them kept coming against Wilt Chamberlain. And as I said before, why have him against over Wilt Chamberlain is because although it's a 5-on-5 basketball game, he was able to go and win all those championships against the most dominant player of all time. Period. On top of it all, it's not even that they were specifically dominant. A lot of people will go and they'll bash the competition of the time. They went to a ton of game 7s. I think they went to 18 game 7s in total for his career. He won every single one of them. He lost the one championship against Bob Pettit when he wasn't even playing in half the series. To me, he was absolutely dominant. In respect to the purpose of the game is winning the NBA championships. Now, I have Mike above him, and I love Bill Russell, but I think he's the only person. I think he's in his own tier below Michael Jordan. I think everyone else are tiers below them. The point of it is that Bill Russell, let alone him being my grandfather, I don't know if you can go and see the resemblance, is just an absolute staple and icon in the game of basketball that gets widely disrespected for the era that he played in and the competition that he played, or some people will say he had such a stacked team. But going to so many game 7s and doing all doing all that, to me, doesn't seem to carry the same aspects of what a lot of people critique him with. Anyway, that's all I got to say about Bill Russell. Robin, you want to respond?
Oh man, God, you guys are killing me today, man. Goodness gracious. I love this show today, though, because like you said, we all have different opinions on this. But what did I tell you guys in the start? My top 10 list is Michael Jordan, and 2 through 10 is fluid, man. I respect everyone's name that we brought up today here as far as who they believe is number 2 all time. I got a lot of respect for Kobe Bryant. I got a lot of respect for Bill Russell, Larry Bird. I respect these guys, man. And when we think about Bill Russell, once again, you can say that Bill Russell, if you told me Bill Russell was the greatest of all time, I'm not going to argue that. I don't believe that he is, and I don't think there's an argument for it, but I don't have any problem with that because it's Bill Russell, man. So everything you said, Darty, you're on the money with this stuff. You know what you're talking about as far as Bill Russell, man. The one thing I have to keep stressing this, man, we lose sight of this stuff, man. The winning and the teammates of Bill Russell, man, they're getting shortchanged here, man. We're not shortchanging Bill Russell. We're shortchanging Sam Jones. We're shortchanging Tommy Heinsohn and Bill Sharman and Bob Cousy, who you love, Dart. We're shortchanging them. Real briefly, I know I'm done. Hold on. When we think about Sam Jones, you can make an argument that he should have won 3 straight Finals MVPs if they gave that award out. You can argue that. People can argue those things. Sam Jones, the game 7 you mentioned, that was largely in part due to also guys like Sam Jones hitting key baskets, man. Wilt Chamberlain's guard play, the teams that he played on, they could not match the guard play of Sam Jones and Bob Cousy and Bill Sharman, these guys, man. So that's what we must remember, man.
All right. Nick, what do you got to say?
Yeah, I mean, this is I think you saw me in the comments the other day, like you're kind of going more by the definition of greatness and legacy, and for sure Bill Russell and Mike and
greatness is the word.
Yeah,
greatest of all time.
For sure. Yeah, like they're definitely up there in that regard. So through that lens, I completely understand. I mean, I'm kind of like with Robin. I don't want to necessarily, I have Russell at let's see, I got Russell like at number 8, right? I just maybe a little, wanting a little more on the offensive end, but like his winning speaks for itself, right? I mean, so I'm not going to sit here and really knock the guys at all, right? And then of course George Mikan, we all remember doing the Mikan drill as a kid, one of the founding fathers of the game, right? So I don't really have too much to push back or add to that. Through your lens, it makes total sense.
Yeah,
what do you got to say?
Yeah, I think
you wanted to jump on me.
Yeah, no, I don't want to jump on you. Russell, to me, is one of the most difficult players to rank all time, in my opinion. He's had the most fluidity. To piggyback on what Sports Fans and Fitness is saying, my list changes and evolves as well. And I used to have Russell, vacillating around that 2 to 3 spot. Now I've got him closer to probably 6-ish. Just because for me, I do look at the era, I look at the differential and the playoff runs that he made in terms of what it requires today to get into a championship and play for it versus, the makeup of the league when he was playing. And also I hate to look at the extreme amount of supporting cast and talents that he had surrounding him, but I have to factor that in to some capacity. And then just kind of how relatively limited offensively he could be at times. For those reasons, I've kind of systematically started lowering him from where I used to have him right around the 3 spot.
Johnny, what do you got to say?
I love Bill Russell. I agree with Scap in the sense that he's the hardest player, like maybe the hardest player to rank out of all of them, out of all the top 10 guys. And honestly, this is all subjective. It depends on what angle I want to take it. As someone who's very competitive, winning at all costs, and he was clutch in game 7s. So I get that. That was badass. But when you try to factor in everything, like, is he that complete of a player? I'll tell you what, he almost never led his team in scoring. He had the luxury of being able to lean on Sam Jones, on being able to lean on John Havlicek. A lot of times he wasn't too. He wasn't even the second leading scorer. So, I mean, that is a nice luxury to have. That just imagine how things would change if every other GOAT candidate had that legacy. Then you add on the fact that there's no free agency and everything. But again, he won a lot and he was clutch as hell. So it's like, I have a hard time with him personally.
But real quick, just to piggyback on that also, just for a couple seconds here, the reason why I don't want to speak for everybody, but I hold two-way players to such a high standard is because think about how much energy that draws off of the other side of the floor. Like, we credit Bill Russell for being probably the greatest defensive player ever, but he really didn't have to worry about the offensive side of the floor. So he was able, to devote and commit that much more attention into being great on that one side.
Well, I just want to respond to that real fast, and I'll take less than a minute. Is that he was a great offensive player. He has the 3rd highest assist per game for a center of all time. He was able to score. A lot of people go and knock his field goal percentage, but why I don't like judging statistics across time is there was different equipment. The ball was different. The rafters were different. Excuse me. The backboard was different. The floor was different, and they played different. So to me, I just think that's a little unfair. Robin, you wanted to say something real fast?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What you were saying with that, with the Bill Russell and the, I just wanted people to know, Sam Jones his nickname was Mr. Clutch before Jerry West's nickname was Mr. Clutch. Why do you guys think that was, man? Because he was out there bricking shots? No, because when it mattered most, Sam Jones was known for hitting the big-time shots. And what Scott was talking about, though, as it relates to the scoring, he's not saying that Bill Russell couldn't score. He didn't have to worry about the scoring. So when you say, yeah, Bill Russell could have done this, and this, he didn't have to worry about that necessarily.
Hey, wait, what do you got to say about all this?
Sorry, I can't hold still when I'm high. I have you guys had the arguments for Bill Russell and the arguments for Wilt, the arguments for everyone that you guys have presented are really strong. I mean, you have incredible arguments for it. So with that in mind, how difficult would it be for any of the guys that got injured that were potential the next Jordans and whatever? Do you think they could have even made it into the top 5 if they'd never suffered injuries? Let's talk Grant Hill and Derrick Rose. If their careers had not been hindered by anything, think they could have even made it into a top 5 if they'd had the full extent of their potential?
Maybe if we played a what-if game, though.
I don't think Derrick Rose or Grant Hill. For me, maybe Penny Hardaway, maybe.
It's so hard though. The top 10 is so outrageously stacked already. Like I see a lot of people that I don't have Steph Curry in my top 10. And I see a lot of people that absolutely just bash me in comments about not having Steph Curry in the top 10. But like when I look at the other 10 guys, like there's only 10 spots. It's a finite amount of space. So I mean, to subjectively or to, I don't know, like you said, playing the what if or the would have, could have, should have, like it's very difficult to look at the 10 that are in there or the 10 that you might have and try to, forecast what possibly could have been if they didn't get hurt.
Exactly.
I got one guy, and no one ever talks about him, but just Maurice Stokes. Just Maurice Stokes going all the way back to 1956 when he came into the league. He was a freak athlete. He was kind of like Bill Russell, and he led the NBA in rebounding his first year out there. For people who don't know the story, because a lot of people don't, he fell on his head and was paralyzed the rest of his life. Jack Twyman took him in, helped take care of his life afterwards. It's a beautiful story. I have videos about it. But that guy had sky is the limit type potential. And I think if he had stayed healthy, it would have been Wilt, Bill Russell, and Maurice Stokes.
Yeah, he averaged like 17 and 17 for 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I saw Rex in the comments. He threw Bill Walton's name out. That's a great name by my man Rex. Bill Walton had that potential to be one of the greatest all-around centers in the history of the game, man. We all know he had the foot injuries. So shout out to Rex for throwing out Bill Walton's name.
Yeah, 100%.
Hoopga, what do you guys say about Bill Russell?
So I wanna quote the great Herm Edwards. You play to win the game. Okay. Now, I want to just address the scoring aspect. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, Bill Russell could do it. No. What I will say is that whenever Boston needed Bill to score, he could score because he has an abundance of games where he scored over 30 points, and they also won, particularly Game 7 in 1962, where that game went into overtime. And Bill Russell and Sam Jones, by the way, yes, they combined for 9 points in total, and Bill Russell ended that game with 30 points, 44 rebounds. So when they needed him to score, he could score. Now, I want to get to the 1962 MVP final race because when I had to go back and research, like, how the hell did he win this? I'm looking at it. Okay, Wilt's putting up astronomical numbers, but Big O's putting up the triple-double. Mr. Clutch, Jerry West is putting up 38 points. I mean, everybody, because
Elgin Baylor.
Elgin Baylor, yeah, they're all putting up great numbers. Only one team were able to get 60 wins. And that guy was number one in defensive win shares. So now it's giving me more context as to why he won that. Because, again, you played to win the game. He did it.
I do want to say also the players voted on that too, which to me makes it mean more, honestly.
Right. Now, and leading into my next topic. So if the players are voting
let's try to wrap it up because it's supposed to be a 1 minute thing, and then it'll be
okay, I'll wrap it up. But I'm looking at it like, if the players are voting and if they felt like Russell had the stacked teams, I would have think, okay, no, you can't have the MVP because of course you have the best team. But yes, him going 10-0 in game 7s, that's remarkable. Like, that shows me he doesn't have the best teams. They were just able to find a way to win.
All right, I just want to talking about, for me, just real fast to end it with Bill Russell. Yeah, the Celtics were great. He didn't have to score. They had a great system, and Russell is credited for putting himself in there perfectly. Red Auerbach said that he was a great team player, just to say it laymanly. To the point of it is that Russell could adjust his game to whatever situation he was in. And that's something in respect to his offensive prowess, especially with scoring, is that he didn't particularly have to do that. I agree with all of you. But what it ended up doing was the 11 championships, 8 in a row. And he also did it as a coach for 2 years. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that's something to consider. But, AOH, I saved you for last because you started going on a interesting tirade. So let's do it again.
Oh. Well, start me off. What was my tirade that you liked? I'm always tirading.
Nobody cares.
Oh, yeah. I kind of said, I don't get any joy in it. And part of the reason I don't get any joy in it is they're all measured by different rules and different interpretations of rules. I mean, every time I have to put an asterisk next to something, like, well, how much time is this really worth spending on? We've never seen these players play by the same rules. We'll never know what they could have done with those different rules. And yeah, it's the woulda, coulda, shoulda. All I know is there were people that I watched, and when I watched the way that they played, it was inspiring. And then there are people like LeBron James that teach you that quitting and having an excuse for losing is okay.
Absolutely. Do you have anything else you'd like to say, or is that just
I'll take some of his time because I actually want to respond to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So that whole not caring is subjective. Again, one of my favorite, I'm shoehorning him in here. One of my favorite Kobe quotes was him saying, it's subjective. He said he didn't care about it because it's not something he can definitively win, the GOAT debate. So I acknowledge that. That's the reason why I don't get emotional about it. I would put it that way. But I do enjoy the debate. I do enjoy the discussion. Basketball is naturally a competitive sport. You are competing. You are trying to find out who is better than who. It's only natural for basketball fans then to want to say, my guy's better than your guy. And the people who try to like stop you from doing that or shame you for doing that, I just think they're weird. I'm like, this is sports. Get over it. Like, get a little thicker skin. We're just having fun here. Nobody's getting hurt. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents on that.
You're 100% correct, but they took the joy out of that as well because the media manipulates what we talk about. And and someone even did a video recently about how this LeBron James being in the GOAT debate with Michael Jordan is a part of what's helping him stay relevant. And people want to give all this credit to LeBron being on the Lakers to make them relevant or keep them relevant. Man, whoever the media decides to tell us is relevant is who's relevant. They spend the amount of time and money that they spend on LeBron James making him a conversation piece. People start making him a conversation piece, just like debating whether or not he's the GOAT. And so it took the joy out of that for me too, because we're really just having a conversation about what we're being told to have a conversation about when you debate with people like LeBron. Now, if you're at the barbershop or if you're hanging out with your buddies in any other situation and you have a really great discussion about two of the greats moving up and down on that list, that's fun. But
yeah, to respond to that though, I genuinely see the silver lining there because I completely agree with you. Media controls so much information, but that's why YouTubers have taken off. That's why independent content creators have taken off, is because we're not getting that giant corporate money. I get to wake up every morning and go, what do I want to talk about? And nobody's telling me what to talk about. I get to make money making my own creative decisions, which means I want to be honest. And so that's my mission, is to put as much joy back into it as possible, because the media and all these stupid debate shows, like you were talking about Kobe falling off the radar after he passed away. I think it was because he's an active player. The way the media machine, or an active player, the way the media machine works is you need one active guy to go against one guy of the past. So you get the old fans going against the new fans. If you got two old guys, if the debate's about Michael Jordan versus Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you're doing two irrelevant guys, and the young fans aren't going to be invested. So when Kobe retired, they abandoned him, and it became all about LeBron. I think that's how it is, and I think LeBron fans are going to be surprised because he's going to get abandoned at some point when a new guy comes up and challenges him, and now it's going to be that guy and MJ. That's how it works.
I almost added that to my point I made earlier about how they treated Kobe's death. I mean, they can't have the Jordan versus LeBron, who is currently an active player, debate if people are still talking about Kobe. It was in their best interest for the narrative that they were presenting to just put Kobe under a rock.
Robin, what do you have to say about this?
Everything that we're talking about here falls right in line with my channel. The premise of my channel is what? Stand on the honor, the integrity, the class, the love of the game. AOH, you talked about not really, loving these people or really falling or being able to get behind these guys, right? And you talk about.
I didn't say any of that.
That's
those are not the words I used.
Yeah, because you don't speak like me, man. You're in the clouds right now. So listen, this is the thing about
I still know which words I used.
Listen, I got you, man. Listen, but when we talk about this stuff, when we talk about Johnny, you're talking about people in the media and YouTubers and things like that. That's all fine and great. The problem is what? They're not standing on integrity. Nobody is. Many YouTubers ain't standing on integrity, man. Yep. And the way that they debate or go at other. Think about what we've been talking about. We've been going around with different players. No one's tearing down anybody with fake narratives and lies about these people. So if I don't agree with Bill Russell being the greatest of all time, and I want to debate against a Bill Russell or something like that, I'm not gonna say, Bill Russell played against white guys, man, that was 6'3". That's tearing down the history up with lies. Like we said earlier, people say about Wilt Chamberlain. Oh, Wilt Chamberlain was playing against 6'5" guys. Wilt Chamberlain was this. They're not making any sense. So what you're doing is you're trying to take away from the NBA's history and raise people up. That's all I see going on. This is why I made a YouTube channel a couple years ago. Literally, that's why. Because no one seems to get, if you want to argue and have that fun fan debate you're talking about, have those conversations, we can do those things. That's what we're doing right now. But that's not what's going on. Whether it's the mainstream media or not, man, it seems to be, like my man A.O. Ways was saying, a concerted effort to tear down people with narratives, whether it's the mainstream media or not, because what we've noticed now also on YouTube is we got ex-NBA players out here with podcasts. We got all these other weirdos out here that got a voice, but they're not making any sense, man. Someone literally asked me, name the 6 Hall of Famers on the New York Knicks. They said that as if I was lying to make Wilt Chamberlain appear greater. That's not what I'm doing here. I've never done that. I'll hold the same standard.
Nick, what do you got to say?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're having a good combo. I don't have much to add, really. I mean, it seems like we're all going around pretty well. So,
Okay.
I mean, I like I said, I think this is probably our most contentious episode yet, but it's been pretty good so far. I've really enjoyed it.
Jay, what do you got to say?
Yeah, this is honestly just kind of more of a question because I think we've all gone and we've all, made our picks for 2 all time. And a guy I used to have at number 2 for a while in my youth,
George Mikan?
I was I'm not that old, Dar. Come on. A guy I used to, just based on resume, I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has, to me, like arguably the most complete resume ever.
Mhm.
He has, 6 league MVPs. He's been to 10 finals. He's won 6. He's I see some head shaking, but when you look, he's top 3 in 3 standard box metrics in points, rebounds, and blocks all time. I mean, he's arguably the second or top 2 or 3 greatest collegiate players of all time. Like, I came on here prepared to argue against Kareem because I have moved him down a good amount over the last couple years, but I was pretty convinced somebody was going to mention Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at 2 all time.
All right, Hoopka, what do you got to say?
Yeah, to follow up on what Scott was saying about Kareem, see, when we start to investigate these guys' careers, right, and I've always said this, and I'll stay consistent. LeBron gets all the criticism he gets. Kobe gets all the criticism he gets, right? Well, if any one of those guys, you can even throw in Jordan and Tim Duncan and all the rest, had they missed the playoffs in back-to-back seasons in the heart of their prime, and one of those years winning the MVP, I mean, we would never hear the end of that. So I think that's a stain on Kareem's legacy, that doesn't get talked about. But yes, if you just look at high school, college, and NBA, I mean, he arguably has the most complete resume. He doesn't have a gold medal, but we do understand, the political stance he took. So I won't hold that again. But just seeing like that era of the 70s, at least get 2. But just to have 1 and then have a 9-year gap until Magic gets there, then it's kind of like, well, nobody else really done that. So I see why Kareem has started to go down on people's all-time list. But at the same time, if you just look at his entire resume, there's really no argument that he doesn't have a legit case at number 2.
I wanted to say real fast about the number 2 and the media narratives. Yeah, I think I think YouTube is a great platform, or other platforms, for people to get out their opinions where somebody has an alternative to mainstream media. In respect to Kareem, he is one of the greatest of all time. He's in my top 10. It's just, for me, why I value Magic so much is that even though Kareem was he was statistically dominant in the 70s. He gets to 30. He gets his last MVP in 1980. In respect to how he was appreciated across the league. I just can't put him at number 2. I just think that in kind of a LeBron-esque way, he just kind of fell short and was statistically dominant during the 70s. Not that that's a problem. I still got him top 10 all time, but to put him number 2, I've never considered him number 2. But yeah, does anyone else want to talk about anything briefly before we start taking callers?
Yo, I want to touch on this Kareem Abdul-Jabbar thing, man, because we about to go
shut
down
that
a
dude
road
up.
right here. I'm about to
He doesn't
hit
let
y'all with
anyone
some
talk.
crazy stuff, man. Listen, I don't know if it's a hot take or not, and I don't know if I might lose all my subscribers, man, if I say this. I don't have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in my top 10, man. I don't have it there. I said it, okay? I'm throwing it out there. Now, once again, Dar, you might have heard me say this before. Nick, you might have heard me say this before in the past. And people, if you subscribe to my channel, I've already told you, I've done a top 10 list. I don't have Kareem there. But let's go back to the beginning, the premise of what I said. To me, I told you guys what? 2 through 10 is fluid. If you told me today Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the greatest basketball player of all time, in your opinion, I got no argument against you. I don't agree with you. I don't think it's an argument over Michael Jordan, but I don't have a problem with that. I respect Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the way he went about his career, the things he accomplished, all that. My biggest thing is, and I'm probably, like I said, I'm out there with this. I value Dr. J more. To me, between Magic Johnson and Julius Erving, it takes away from Kareem's greatness. And I'm not saying, like, once again, if you told me he was the greatest of all time, that's great. Top 2, top 3, top 5, fine. When we think about Magic Johnson and we think about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to me, Magic Johnson was the greater player. To me, Magic Johnson was the greater leader. He was the guy that galvanized the team. A lot of people, like Gilbert Arenas said, what did he say? Hey, man, the Lakers won in 79, and then they drafted Magic Johnson. That was crazy. Gilbert Arenas really said that nonsense. Let's not forget, like my man Hoopka said, he was on the Lakers for years before Magic Johnson got there. They weren't winning anything. Let's think about also when he won the championship in Milwaukee. I saw people in the comments earlier talking about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and winning in Milwaukee. He didn't win his first year in Milwaukee. He had to wait for Oscar Robertson to come there. A lot of people think that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar came to the Milwaukee Bucks with Oscar Robertson there. He was not there. He came the next season. So once again, you're talking about an arguable top 5 point guard of all time, Oscar Robertson, and you win a championship. Then you go all those years, you don't win. You go to LA, you win all these MVPs. And my problem with that, and I bring in the Julius Erving now, to me, Dr. J was the greater player because he was more iconic. He meant more to the game than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did. When you think about Magic and Larry Bird, they say Magic and Larry Bird saved the NBA. They got him out of the tape delay. That may be true to a degree, but it was Dr. J coming in from the NBA that allowed the NBA to survive long enough for Magic Johnson and Larry Bird to take it into the 80s, man. Without the merger of the ABA and the NBA bringing in the three-point line, where's today's game at? Without Dr. J and the high-flying acrobatics and the poetry in motion, the beauty of his game, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wasn't keeping the NBA afloat. He was not. So these are things that I allude and I think about when I'm ranking guys. My man OAOH is over here doing this thing. You know what I'm saying? I got him relaxed, listening to my voice, the smooth sounds of sports and fitness rants. So but for me, that's the only thing with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But once again, I'm not tearing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar down. I'm not making none of this stuff up. These are the facts here, man. I got Dr. J in my top 10. You guys know that. So for me, I'll go with Dr. J. And if I believe that Dr. J was in the NBA, there was no ABA. The NBA was the only league around. I believe Dr. J gets voted as some of those MVPs over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar easily, man.
But that's speculative though on Dr. J. Outside of the ABA, what did he win in the NBA without Moses Malone?
Who, Dr. J?
Yeah.
Once again, what did Kareem Abdul-Jabbar win in the NBA without Oscar Robertson or Magic Johnson or other things?
That's fine, but you brought up Kareem.
Think that the ABA is worth being merged and worth having his stats transferred over?
You brought up Kareem supporting cast, and that the reasons that you highlighted is why I've systematically been dropping him, further down my list, and primarily because he was the most individually dominant player of the 70s, and he really couldn't win anything. But when you bring up Dr. J, like he came in, he was still in his peak when he came out of the ABA, and he didn't really win anything until, 3-time league MVP Moses Malone came on board, and they had that magically dominant season in the early 80s.
So Dr. J can't have any help.
I'm just saying Dr. J had at least as much help as Kareem had when you look at that team that he won.
And Dr. J was going to the NBA Finals without these guys. Listen, when we think about Dr. J, the things that I mentioned to why I would rank him higher, once again, I told you it's the worthiness of these rankings. This is not me saying, hey, definitively, I can argue Dr. J is greater than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar based off of stats or accolades or things of this nature. We're talking about the impact on the game, the icon. Once again, I say, if they're voting on MVPs, if Dr. J is in the NBA in the 70s, because all I hear about Kareem is the MVPs he won and the championships he won, and that's great. Once again, you can obviously see I'm not standing on championships on my list. Ain't got nothing to do with that, because we can also go to the competition that Dr. J was going against in the late 70s, the early 80s. Right. We just talked about this earlier. But what I'm saying to you guys is this. If Dr. J plays in the NBA, then to me, he gets about 3 of those MVPs. That's my point there. But we go into the winning all we want.
Robin, let's please let the other people give a response of what you're saying. I have no comment, but I'll just leave it at that.
I'll take a comment. This was a layup. It's a layup. All right. I'm not going to hate on Dr. J. I hate it when somebody's like, I have this guy ahead of this guy. And I'm like, well, I think this guy's underappreciated. And now I have to knock him down just to be realistic. I'm not going to do that. I won't even touch Dr. J. Kareem has got to be at least top 4, though. What are we talking about? He's the NBA's all-time leading scorer. And that's not just because he played a long time. He had the most unstoppable shot in the history of basketball. And it's so difficult and so special that no one can replicate it, even though we recognize you can't stop this when you're 7'2" tall. On top of that, he's the all-time block shots leader. You want to talk about longevity? Look at what he did in the 1985 NBA Finals after everyone was starting to write him off and everybody was saying he was done. One of the greatest old man Finals MVPs of all time. His resume is incredible. And yes, he was on the Lakers before Magic Johnson. And yes, they missed the playoffs. But we got to remember the context of that era, because that Lakers team was not your typical Lakers team, right? They had just lost Wilt Chamberlain. They were coming off of their dominating days and they were rebuilding. And so that was going to take some time. I just think Kareem needs more love there. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. His resume is the best.
Hoop Goddard, Nick, you have anything to say?
Just real quick. Yeah, I just want to say, I think, I understand we don't just look at stats and stuff, but I just think on paper, Kareem's really hard to deny being in the top 10. I kind of have Duncan, Dr. J, and LeBron around that top 10 to 13 area. So I could put Dr. J in my top 10. It's definitely, I think he's definitely worthy of that accolade. But I just think on paper, I think Johnny kind of said it. He's just really hard to deny, especially if we go back to high school. If you want to go out, if we're going to talk about a total career, I'm just saying he has an absolutely monumental resume, right? High school to the last day he played. It's just impressive, right? It's just really hard to deny.
AOH or Hoop God, do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in. I have Kareem in my 6 through 10. I mean, like I said, it's fluid, but also Dr. J too. Once I started to research his career, and when you do combine his ABA accomplishments on par with the NBA, I think he has right over 30,000 points, 3 MVPs. And
too.
Yeah, he won a championship in the ABA, and then he won one in the NBA. Now, what I will say is, yes, he was getting to the finals, and I don't know if you guys can name him, but I can't even think who his second best player was until, like Scap said, he got the great Moses Malone. They gave him that adequate front court production that he
World
needed.
Be Free, James Toney.
Right. So I think that's a legit discussion. Now, if you compare the
magical Oscar?
Yeah, I don't think the resumes are close, but when you just look at the players and what they were doing and their production, I think that's where it's a legit argument. But yeah, I do have Kareem in my 6 through 10. Of course, I have Magic higher, but yeah, I won't rebuttal anybody who may have him higher. It's just for me, my greatest center is Hakeem, but still, I think Kareem is worthy of top 10. But if you don't have him in there, I won't argue that.
This is the most shocking twist of this whole debate so far.
I
me and Scap are on the same page. I thought for Kareem, he was going to be top 5 for everybody. So this is crazy to me. So,
I have him at 3. So
I want to ask the panel a quick question, man. I've listened to what you guys had to say here, and once again, man, I'm loving this right now. This is great right here. I want you guys to name me the iconic moment of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
That's not fair, because stop. Because now you're
Name
talking about how
the
boring a
iconic
dude
moment
is.
of Kareem
The Tim
Abdul-Jabbar.
Duncan narrative. It's like he's boring. He doesn't have anything exciting.
Man,
No.
Exactly.
Boring.
Exactly.
I'm asking you an easy question. If Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you just said, had all this longevity, you name me the iconic moment of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's career.
Every time he did this,
That's the
single
iconic moment.
time. It was iconic.
You're getting
Every
ridiculous
time.
right now. Listen, let's just get
childhood.
this straight out the way here, man. You guys can't name it. No one can name the iconic moment. But how many times you turn an NBA film or you watch the history of the NBA and they'll show the Dr. J layup or they'll show the Dr. J rocking the cradle dunk against the Lakers. So once again, when I'm talking about the icon, and I told you guys earlier on this live stream, my 1 through 10 is about the honor, about being worthy to be there. For me, Dr. J is worthy. The guys I have in my top 10, I also have Jerry West in my top 10. Who has Jerry West in their top 10? Who has Dr. J in their top 10? Once again, I value and stand on other things, man. You guys keep talking about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's high school and college career. Who gives a damn? Who gives a damn? We're talking about the NBA, the greatest players of the NBA. I don't give a damn about his college career or his high school career because I can easily say that Bill Walton was being touted as better than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was at UCLA. So what the hell are we talking about here, man? Listen, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being number 1 all time or 2 or 3 or 4, I got no problem with that. All I'm saying to you guys is you couldn't even name me an iconic moment of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's played with guys that you can argue are top 10 all time. I have Magic Johnson number 4 all time. How the hell can I put Kareem Abdul-Jabbar number 2 if his teammate was number 4? It don't make no sense. You can only have one of those guys in the top 10, Magic or Kareem. It can't be both. Look at the other guys you named. What other player has a top 10 teammate? Nobody.
The premise is whack.
I've debated
Your premise is whack. He doesn't need an iconic play. You're literally talking about how flashy he is. Should we put Shannon
Johnny,
Brown in the conversation because he has iconic block shots? What are you talking about?
Tim, look,
Sorry,
Tim Duncan would not be in the discussion as an all-time great or a top 10 if we're going on flash or aesthetic appeal.
I'm not telling you guys here that you have to have iconic moments or all of these iconic. I'm asking you guys to name one. One play, you guys can't even name one.
His skyhook.
When he broke the all-time scoring record,
when he broke,
that's not a cow. Stop, come on, man.
How about the same with Magic?
I was gonna say when he broke Wilt's record, like that's the only one.
Let's reel it in, guys.
I'm not saying that Dr. J is greater than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'm not saying when I told you guys about my list. To me, if I had to pick players, 10 players, I can't put Kareem there with Magic.
Yeah, let's move on.
Sorry, Dart.
There for a second. Oh no, it's all good. I just don't want it to.
Well, we're here. It's live, man. We're live, man.
We're live. It's all good. You
can't bring the reins in, man. We gotta be free spirits out here sometimes.
Oh yeah.
I'm smoking weed. He's doing lines.
I let it go. I let it go for a bit. I just think it started to get to maybe it might devolve a little too far. But yeah, I'm gonna open the lines for calls. So the easiest way to go and call into the show is if you come to my channel. Just as a reminder, if you're not familiar with any of these guys that are on the panel right now, please subscribe to them, like their content, and if you really like them, get some, turn the notifications on for them. But the easiest way to go and call in is to go to my channel and click the link. And if you like what I had to say or you like the show in general, please subscribe to my channel as well. But I've dropped the link in my chat. The easiest way to go is to come to my channel and call in, as I said. Hoop God, while we're waiting for callers, you said you wanted to say something.
No, I was just that was the iconic moment I was thinking about when he broke the all-time scoring record, because I think they, how they started the countdown back then, but it wasn't nowhere near to the degree that it was today. But they show it. I think they showed it on the was it the Winning Time doc with the Lakers and the Celtics? If it wasn't that, it was the Courtship of Rivals. I can't remember which one, but I know they were like, "Will Kareem break the record in this game?" And when he finally did it, so that's the only one I can think.
All right, let's we got Pierre in here. Pierre, you got a minute to ask a question to somebody. Please say who you're asking to, and then they'll respond.
Hey guys, how's everybody doing?
Doing good.
Excellent.
Great.
Yo.
You got a question for somebody or a comment?
I don't know what's going on, Dark, but Hoop God keeps talking. I don't know what's wrong.
You're on
I think you're watching the YouTube itself. If you watch,
you might need to mute the video so you're not under the delay.
Okay, I got it. Yep.
All right.
Okay, I got the problem. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries. You have a question for somebody? You got a minute to ask it.
Listen, Dart, I just want to ask one thing.
Okay.
Why don't we account for Dr. J's points in the ABA along with his NBA stuff too, together? It needs to be counted together. It's all pro basketball. And I'm 66 years old. I was around. I watched all these guys play. So, that's what I'm saying. We need to account for both. Am I right, Nick?
I would say largely they're acceptable. I wouldn't push back too much against that.
Yeah. So that's my question, Doc. You know,
So you
I
want
just
Nick?
want to
You
know, I
want Nick,
just want to know if the panel agrees to that. That's all.
one person to answer because we got people trying to call, more people trying to call in. So who do you want to answer that?
Oh, let Scap answer. He's my man.
All right, Scap, you got a minute to answer.
Thank you for the shout out. I appreciate it. And look, honestly, Dr. J is one of, to me, you know, I mentioned Bill Russell earlier, but Dr. J is a very difficult player for me to kind of conceptualize because of the ABA, the time spent in the ABA. Like you could say, like a very large portion of his prime was played in the ABA. So, I mean, it's just the amount of teams that were there, the difference, and it's not just Dr. J. It is. It's a large portion of that decade of the 70s is kind of difficult to really wrap my mind around personally, because there were other great players that came from the ABA as well. You know, Dark, going back to your Mikan premise, like he didn't play all the time in the NBA. There's like other leagues that he kind of like floated around during that time. And it's just hard for me personally. I'm just being honest and answering the question as openly and honestly as I can. Like it's hard for me to contextualize what that ABA time meant. For me, like Dr. J is absolutely, he's in like my top, somewhere in my top like 13 range. So I'm not diminishing or discrediting anything Dr. J did. And I think like I'm aware of everything that he did in the ABA, and I kind of wrap it to some degree into the NBA. But in my estimation, they are kind of separate, just in my own opinion.
Right.
All right.
And Doug, I just want to add.
You got a minute to say something here. And then
Doug,
I
I just want to add one thing.
All right.
Here's my point. Okay. In addition to that, I was referencing the fact that if you add his ABA stuff with it, you know, does that put him in the top 10? You know, that's really what was my point. But like I got him 12 right now, you know, on my list. But I'm saying if you add the stuff from the ABA too, I think is a good argument that he should be in the top 10 if you add that stuff in. That's my point.
It's a great point. I agree with you. I have him at 12 too. And it's a great point. Because if you do just add, thank you so much for the call, by the way, and the question, and for following us here. But you know, I think that if you just make those ABA stats mean NBA, like if he just accomplished those exact same things in the ABA at the NBA at the time, I think there is a very valid case to make him top 10 then at that point. That's why I think he's outside for me, because I do view the ABA time a little bit differently.
All right, we got Buki Allen here. You got a minute to ask a question and say who you want to answer it.
Hey, what up, fellas?
What up?
Hey,
What's
everybody
up?
doing on this Sunday?
What up, man?
Nothing. I think I just think Dr. J, he is underappreciated. It's a lot of underrated guys like Moses Malone. You had a lot of underrated guys, but yeah, I think the thing I don't like, people always say Kobe can't be top 5 because he played with Shaq. That's the only thing I don't like.
Okay. Do you have a question, or you just got a? Do you have a question, or you just got a comment?
Just a comment. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Because he played with Shaq. They always use that over his head that he played with Shaq.
All right. Well, thank you for calling in, Buki.
All right.
Thanks, man.
All right. We got the next guy, Tony DeVera. How are you today, sir?
Hey, how you guys doing? The only thing I wanted to comment, or I guess pose this as an open question to anyone who wants to take the for or against, and it's some person that I think hasn't been mentioned enough in this chat has been Tim Duncan. And like when I look at things that really matter to me in terms of chips, finals MVPs, all NBA selections, like Tim Duncan should be up there with, you know, Magic, Kobe, people in that second tier of GOATs. And I mean, I think he's obviously underrated and underappreciated because he had such a, you know, kind of boring style of play, really fundamental, didn't stack stats as much as a lot of other players. But I just wanted to hear anyone who wanted to take up the case either for or against him being second greatest all time, or even in that top 5. Just see whoever wanted to take that up.
I got him at 10.
Look it up. Tim Duncan, he still has the most double-doubles all time, regular season and playoffs. He still has the most blocks in the playoffs, and he still
All right, we'll let Hoop God answer. 1 minute.
Yeah, he still has the record for most blocks in an NBA final series. He has the highest defensive win share rating in the 2003 playoffs. So, no, you're absolutely right. I think Tim Duncan does have a legitimate case, and he does get kind of swept under the rug. But again, you have to go do thorough research to understand Tim Duncan's impact. And another one that stood out to me is that he had a 19-year career championship window, never missed the playoffs. If you remove the lockout season, he never won under 50 games. And then his defensive prowess and impact, it's not measured by the stats. You got to go back and watch, So no, you're absolutely right. I think Tim Duncan does have a legitimate case. It's just like, I think a lot of people, not saying anybody on the panel, they value different things. It's like that flash that is aesthetically pleasing to the game, those type of things. But me just being a fanatic of basketball, I greatly appreciate Tim Duncan. So no, I wouldn't argue anybody who has him number 2 all time, because at one point I did, but of course he got surpassed by somebody else, Kobe being Bryant.
All right, Tony, you got a minute to respond.
Oh, well, I guess one last thing I'll say is I prefer to think of GOATs in terms of like tiers, or almost like a pyramid. Like obviously MJ is way up there at the top on his own. Then there's like maybe a stack of 3 guys underneath that, and then a third tier with 5 guys, then a fourth tier with 7 guys. And I would say in that second tier for me, it's Magic, Kobe, and Duncan. But I'm curious if anyone else thinks of it that way, and who you would put maybe in that like top 9 if it's stacked that way. Like you got, 3 guys tied for second, and then 5 guys tied for third.
We're gonna move on to the next caller, but yeah, you got 20 seconds. You want to say anything else?
Oh, that's all I had to say.
All right. Well, thank you for calling.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
All right, we've got Jimmy James, and AOH keeps dropping out, but Jimmy James, welcome. You have a question for the panel or a comment? You got a minute?
Yeah, I think the Larry Bird thing is kind of like a what if type of thing. Like, what if he would have hired someone to pave his mom's driveway?
Yeah,
because he went to the finals 4 years in a row, and that year that he hurt his back, I think, is when they got their first loss out of that 4-year run. And then I guess he got a split after that, so he won 2 out of 4, and then after that was kind of it. And then he started to just have a lot of issues with his back, and he just wasn't the same. But I feel like he could have been either 1 or 2 if not for that.
Yeah.
Do you have a question for somebody, or you just wanted to make that comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to see what people I don't know what people's thoughts were on that.
You want a specific person to answer it?
Is there anyone that's a big Larry Bird guy?
Nick, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, Lynn Bias and Larry Bird's back, right? It's the greatest what if, especially for Celtics history, right? So, again, I think guys like Robin, we talk about like kind of old school mentality, right? He could have easily paid somebody, but decided he wanted to do it himself and help his mom out, or his grandma. So, yeah, absolutely. This is one of those things where, like, when you make a certain amount of money, you can just pay people to do things for you. We all wish he would have done that, but yep, it's definitely a tragedy.
All right, you have a minute to respond, Jimmy James.
Yeah, so I think I still have him in my top 3. I think he could have been, like I said, probably 1 or 2. I think Kareem is probably number 2 for me, and I don't feel super strongly about it, but it's just kind of hard to deny. 6 championships, 40, whatever, 1,000 points, or however many he had.
38,387.
Yeah.
Yeah. 5 MVPs. Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to
That boy
argue with,
Scap.
but I mean, I could change it probably, within a month or something. But I think I got
6
Kobe.
MVPs.
Kobe is up there as far as like competitiveness. I don't think he's the best player, but he's definitely at least a top 3 or top 5 as far as competitors go in the league. And I kind of rank him more in that competitiveness than the actual being the top player.
For sure.
So
All right. Well,
I think that's the main points I want to make.
Thank you.
all right. Well, thank you for calling, Jimmy James. Real fast, this reminds me of something. I wanted to go and acknowledge that Ed Frank sent me a $20 super, or I don't know, it was somebody earlier, and I realized that I clicked off of it and forgot to acknowledge it. So I apologize, Ed Frank. If you'd like, you can email me and I can acknowledge it at the front of the show. But we have Gilbert Arenas in here.
Oh, God.
And he said,
And look what he goes to. He goes right to drug testing. We're still talking about drug testing, Gilbert Arenas. This guy don't give it up, man.
Hey, shout out to Gil, man. Gil, come on up, big dog.
Nah, we don't want him mumbling and bumbling and stumbling ass on here. Talking in circles.
No, but he for $20, he says, get drug tested. The ball has been the same size since 1949, so bird shooting didn't get better because the ball got smaller. Yeah, I know that the ball has changed multiple times. I forget the number of times. I looked at it probably a couple months ago, but I know the ball drastically changed over time. I can't say what the differences were each individual specific time, but what I understand is that it did get smaller, but I may be mistaken.
Yeah, you have to look that up. The thing I've always said for Bird is when he was coming into the league, the NBA three-point line was literally just being introduced to the NBA. So, I mean, he kind of had to learn it on the fly. And then just because of the way the league was played, they weren't shooting a ton of them. That might be an excuse, but, I mean, it makes sense why he got better as his career went along.
And his coach, like his first coach, discouraged the three-point shot. So, that has to be factored into the
I'm still waiting for Gilbert Arenas, man, to take me up on that debate, Larry Bird versus LeBron James. But he's nowhere to be found. Have me on Gil's Arena, you clown, and I'll debate you all day. Because LeBron James ain't close to Larry Bird, man.
Hey, wait a minute,
Right.
Gil. Gil, you did say on Vlad TV, you said Larry Bird would beat LeBron James one-on-one, Gil. I got it clipped, so keep that same energy, sir.
That's what I'm saying. He all over the place. He don't know what he's doing. He rambling in circles.
All right, we got Gary here. Welcome, Gary. You got a minute to ask a question to someone on the panel.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Salute Sport and Fitness Rants. My guy, keep that same energy. Scap, we go back, continue to grind. I don't know where AOH went, but continue on with doing what you're doing. Thanks, Johnny, for coming through. I got a question for Johnny. As it pertains to meltdowns, a player choking, how much should that count against a player if they continuously melt down versus what they achieve?
If they continuously melt down, I mean, it's massive. How you perform when it truly matters is huge. I mean, it's the reason why Patrick Ewing doesn't get as much love as many of the other great centers at that time. If you have just one or two of those instances, because there's guys who have a long track record of that, like James Harden, for example. But if you just have a couple instances of that, it really shouldn't affect much because everybody's got that to a certain extent. Magic Johnson in the '84 finals to almost everyone. The one exception is Michael Jordan is the closest one to not having that. You can maybe point to the '95 playoffs. I get he's got his baseball body excuse, but Michael Jordan is the closest one to a perfect playoff career. And so I think when you're comparing him to that, that's where those aspects are magnified. But once you start getting further down the list, you're going to find a lot of guys who had moments where they weren't great. LeBron in 2011, Kobe in 2004, Steph Curry's had his moments. There's a lot of guys that just didn't play their best, when it mattered. So it just depends on who they're being compared to is what I think. So.
All right, Gary, you got a minute to respond and we're going to go to the next caller.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. I agree with you, but I just don't agree with where you have LeBron ranked because as we know, excluding the finals meltdowns, we got the 07 meltdown, 06 meltdown, 08 meltdown, 09 meltdown, 2010 meltdown, 2019 meltdown. So I don't understand where you have them ranked at.
Sure. I'm trying very hard to not make this everybody gets me on LeBron, so I appreciate it. I know if I say one positive thing about LeBron, that's all the show's going to become. So out of respect for Dart, I'm kind of trying to avoid that.
Yeah. Okay. We got Dirk is the GOAT here. Welcome. You got a minute to ask a question.
Yeah, I'm glad that everyone here kind of understands that LeBron is not number two. I've been saying this my entire life, and people look at me like I'm crazy because of the media, right, and the propaganda that's been going on. But I want to talk about a contemporary of LeBron, right, which in my opinion diminishes even more. Steph Curry, right? Steph Curry has the same amount of rings as LeBron. And, you know, part of me, people want to put him in the top 10. I don't think anyone here has that, but part of me believes that the reason people want to put him there is because of the weak move that Kevin Durant made in order to make their team stacked, right? If Steph Curry had 2 less rings, I don't think anyone would be having him even close to the top 10 or 15. I just want to get your opinion, actually mainly Scab. I want to get your opinion on where Steph Curry ranks right now.
Yeah, like I said earlier in the show, first of all, thank you for the question. Thank you for joining the show. I do not have Steph Curry in my top 10. I've been kind of trying to get him up a little bit more. I just disclosed that I have Dr. J at my 12 spot. That I have Dr. J ahead of Steph right now. Yeah, look, I'm not discounting Steph's offensive impact in the era that he's played in, which everyone's going to diminish his early years to ankle injuries. I see that argument made all the time when I bring up, Steph pre-Steve Kerr arriving. But we saw a little window of Steph before this era of statistical inflation and pace uptick started, and Steve Kerr came in and integrated the system that he put Steph in. And Curry wasn't a great player in those early portions of his career. And he's, of course, a moderately decent defender. He's passable. I guess he's not quite a liability defensively, but he certainly doesn't excel at the other end. And then, of course, yes, you mentioned with the Kevin Durant 2 rings, I just struggle to count those. They're just diminished and tarnished to me, just like LeBron James is. So I guess I'm, kind of viewed as a Steph hater. I think he's kind of scraping into my top 15 at this point.
All right. The guy had left, Dirk is the GOAT, but thank you for calling in. Dirk is the GOAT. We have Ed here. Welcome, Ed. Are you Ed Frank? And if so, I apologize for not showing your super chat.
Yeah, that's me. Can you hear me?
Yes. I guess up front, what did you say for your super chat? You can ask whoever that it was targeting, and then you'll do the question afterwards.
I'm not gonna. My super chat was directed at Arnett, and I'm not going to go any further on that. I mean, you guys probably saw how I feel about him. I think his videos tried to pretty much demolish Michael Jordan, if you want to say that. And I've come on here before. You've probably known. I probably am one of your best fans that will say Michael Jordan is the GOAT, the best that I've ever seen. I've seen all these other guys. I've seen Kobe. I've seen LeBron, and there's nobody comparable to Mike. On that same note, Robin, you got to be a little bit fair when you kind of compare Dr. J and Kareem. There's one thing called physical intangibilities. When you're 7 foot, but you're still allowed to have a skyhook and dominate the league, then that's a pretty good guy. I mean, I've seen Dr. J in film go against Kareem, and it was phenomenal. I mean, it was kind of a battle of the gods, if you want to say that. 2 different eras, if you want to say that. 2 different styles, definitely. And, I kind of look at those guys and say, hey, they did bring the NBA further than anybody else could have brought it. Magic did that too as well. What I want to say as far as Kobe and what we talked about Wilt, those are 2 of my second guys behind Michael. I liked Kobe because I've never seen anybody close to Mike, and Kobe brought that out. Wilt, on the other hand, was the greatest physical specimen. I never seen him live. I'm not going to say I saw him live. Everything I saw about Wilt was on film. But I also know and hear stories about Wilt. And one of the stories I hear was that Wilt's mom asked him to be nice and not take over the league and not hurt people, which he could have done. Wilt had those abilities to do that. I mean, he was an incredible guy. I don't understand why his winning wasn't greater. And that's something that I have to take into account. But I still can put him up there just based on all these things, based watching him on all those types of plays and leading the league in assists.
Ed, I'm sorry. Do you have a question for somebody, or did you just want to comment? Johnny said he wanted to comment on his video briefly as well, but do you have a question for somebody?
So, Arnett's video, and I saw these videos on Twitter, everywhere. he tries to point out that something is definitive, and then there's, I forgot the words he used.
Possible.
Possible. Thank you. There is no such thing as definitive. I mean, I looked at those films over and over prior to you even putting them up.
You saw the
And
full
I
game?
know that a lot of those were not definitive. You can't see them based on the film, but I'm going to tell you that I watched Michael Jordan live. I was out at Oakland when he came out there. I watched him live, and I know the fact what he was. And some of that stuff I thought you just put up was not right.
All right, thank you, Ed. We're going to let Johnny respond real fast, and then you can respond for a minute after that. I want to let you talk more because you did the super chat, and I didn't acknowledge it.
Sure. First off, if anybody wants to see those games, they're all in the pinned comment of that video that I did. All 10 of them. I did Habistro 6, the other 4. If everybody's going to have different definitions of what was a steal and what was, and going to disagree with me, I did mention that in the video. Now, I will say this. The average watch time of that video was 15 minutes. It was 35 minutes long. And my conclusion at the end of it was that Tom Habistro looks like he cherry-picked games, because when I picked my 4 games up against his 6 games, my 4 games were much more accurate. The other conclusion is that Michael Jordan looked pretty damn good out there, like the best defensive guard I've ever seen. If I'm being completely honest, I was curious to see the truth in this video, like just what the stats are. And so I did my counting. I put them out there for anybody who wants to go see them. But it doesn't change anything for me. Michael Jordan is one of the greatest defensive guards of all time. And next, I'm looking at LeBron's assists, to be fair, because that's been requested a lot. So anybody saying that it's not fair, I don't think there's anything wrong with digging into it and seeing what's true. But at the conclusion, whether or not the statistician was correct or wrong, anybody with an eye test can see Michael Jordan was just a freak defensively. He was incredible. So it doesn't change anything for me. He's the GOAT.
All right, Ed, you got a minute to respond, and we're going to let the next caller in. And thank you for calling and super chatting.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, I was going to thank him on being honest about that part. And there was another YouTuber I watched. It's Jordan versus LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out and said the exact same thing that I was going to say, but Arnett cleared himself up, that you did not want to go and present these types of videos against LeBron or any other of the guys in that era that Michael was going against. And now you're saying that you will, which I'm very hopeful that you will. And that way we can see, first of all, I don't believe LeBron is in the top 25.
Yeah.
You saw me in the chat put in top 300, top 400. I mean, this guy is getting lower by the second. By the time I get off this call, I'm going to have him at top 500. I mean, but yeah, if you can just be fair and put those kind of videos out. Again, another channel I watch, D Allen RX, I believe.
Ed, thank you. Ed, thank you for calling. We're going to move on to the next caller. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Yo,
Yep,
thanks,
bye-bye.
man.
All right, we got. What's up, Robin?
I just wanted to add something on to what they were just talking about, man. When we think about steals and we think about
I'll
the
be right back.
rules and how things are written, there's something called the control tip. I saw in Johnny's video, we're talking about tips and things of that nature. Oh, if I tip the ball and Michael Jordan gets it, that should have been my steal, not Michael Jordan's. That's not necessarily the case. See, that's the problem here, man. There's a gray area when we talk about control tip. So if you go to pass the ball and you tip it on the air and it doesn't go right to your teammate, that's not a control tip. There were many times in those videos, I watched the whole 35 minutes, Johnny, so I didn't half-ask you at all. And you know what I said about your video. I did a video about you. I thought you were right on. You were good, man. I give you a lot of credit for that. You did some stuff. The one thing that we have to think about is the gray area, the control tips of a lot of these steals, man. And I don't think there was any malice involved in this. They're not trying. Once again, Michael Jordan was never the stats. That's all I wanted to say.
One thing I want to respond to that is the rule states that it needs to be controlled. It either needs to be controlled or deflected away from an opponent. That is the distinction. So both of those works. You can look it up. That rule is in the pinned comment of that video. It needs to be either controlled or away from an opponent. So I think those both work. Again, but if I'm wrong, I'll be humble enough to admit it. That's fine. That's fine, which is why I'm okay with you guys getting your own counts. The videos are there.
And I wanted to touch on this real quick. They didn't start tracking deflections, okay? Deflections weren't tracked back then. They didn't start tracking deflection until, I believe, either 2013, 14, or 15, one of those 2 years. Now, I'm saying it to say this. they track deflections, Scotty, you would have got credit for the deflection. MJ would have got credit for the steal, vice versa. If Michael Jordan deflects the ball and Scotty gets it, you'll get the credit for the steal. MJ get credit for the deflection. But I get what they're trying to do. They're strategically trying to revise history because they know that the guy they're trying to campaign for cannot win this debate. I mean, it's 21 years now, for crying out loud. If you couldn't surpass Michael Jordan in 15 years, how the hell are you going to surpass him in 21?
5 seconds. 5 seconds. 5 seconds. Just 5 seconds. The very next article he wrote the next day was that Bronny James was underrated. So, I mean, it's a little fishy. Go ahead.
Yep. Let's welcome Matt. How are you today, sir? Do you have a question? Who do you want to direct it to?
Hi, Love from India. Yeah, so I just had. Yeah. I was not even born when Michael Jordan was winning championships. I was like born in '92 or something. So yeah. So for the question I have is like for Scap and maybe Johnny. So
Which one?
when you're ranking your
You get to pick one.
Okay, Johnny, because he picked Wilt, I think, or second.
Wilt. Yep.
So so when you're ranking these guys, how much do you take into account how they can create their own shot? Because MJ could do it all day, Kobe could do it all day, but the front court guys, I mean, I don't know how you take into account the creation of their own shot when you're doing these rankings.
All right, Johnny, you got it.
Yeah, I think it'll be quick. I mean, I think it should matter to a certain extent, but I do think people put too much value in it. Because, like, for example, Shaquille O'Neal was just a tank, and he was scoring over the top of people. I'm not going to say he didn't have skills. Shaq actually had excellent footwork. Like, he did have underrated skills. But I'm not going to look at him and say Kevin Durant's better than Shaq just because Kevin Durant can do more things. Well, yes, but what Shaq did, he did really, really well, you know? And then an underrated thing about Wilt is he was a diverse scorer. I mean, he didn't have he wasn't typically shooting threes. We have those shots of him hitting those hook shot threes over and over again. But he had an incredible fadeaway, a finger roll, soft touch. He was a mid-range scorer who could score with finesse. And so I think you have to factor that in somewhat. But I think too many times people just put too much value in being a great all-around player. Because if you have one thing that works for you, freaking milk it, man. Like, Steph Curry should shoot as many threes as possible. Shaquille O'Neal should get down in the paint and dominate as much as possible. And a guy like LeBron should take it to the rim as much as possible. So I just think go with what you got.
All right, Matt, you got a minute to respond. After this, we'll take 3 more callers and shut this thing down.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
You got a minute to respond.
Come on, wake up, India.
All right, Matt, we can't hear you, but thank you
Thanks,
for calling.
Matt.
We're going to Yep.
Much respect. Shout out to India again, man.
All right, we got Austin here, and we'll have Ray Day and Leon. But Austin, you have a question. You got a minute to ask, and who are you asking?
I'm gonna ask a sports guy over here from New York. All right. Now, I know you were talking about Wilt, and I respect that. I mean, I love Wilt. He's my second, almost my go-tier guy. Love him. But what you were saying about like credit and everything and all that, it's really interesting what you said, though. I really thought it was great. But my question is, when you were talking about him going up against the Knicks, right? Would you say that Wilt's team got the best of those Knicks, or would you say that they were just outmatched?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if we want to be real here, we can say that the Knicks probably got the best of the Lakers, right? They won 2. I believe they played 3 times in the finals, if I'm not mistaken. We all know about Willis Reed coming out of the tunnel. See, this is the thing right here. When we talk about Wilt Chamberlain, I started off, and I really appreciate you asking me this question and calling up, man. Thank you for the support. When I think about Wilt Chamberlain, like, once again, I did not grow up watching Wilt Chamberlain. Like I said, I'm nowhere near that. But the one thing I do understand about Wilt Chamberlain is, once again, he was not allowed to use his physical advantage to his advantage, or his physical size to his advantage. So you don't think that frustrated Wilt Chamberlain? You don't think that would frustrate somebody if you're constantly getting, not being able to do what you can do? Like I mentioned Shaq. And we must focus on the defensive end in the 60s, man. The defenders in the 60s were allowed to put two hands on you. I saw a play one time, right? Bill Russell was going to the hole, right? And the defensive player turned his back on Bill Russell to try to shield himself away from being dunked on, and they called an offensive foul on Bill Russell. The guy was nowhere near in position. This is the way the game was, man. Wilt Chamberlain was never allowed to do what he could have done in the 2000s or some of these other eras. So that, for me, I think the Knicks, like I mentioned earlier, they had a great team. The New York Knicks of the early 70s, man, you can argue that they're the most stacked team in the history of the game, man. They had a bunch of great players. They were coached great. So, yeah, I think that they may have gotten the best of Wilt Chamberlain and the Lakers. But once again, man, this is the end of Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West's career.
Right, yeah. I was just thinking, like, you were naming off all the Hall of Famers on those Knicks teams, man. They were great. I never watched them. I'm young, but I'm a huge old head when it comes to basketball. Huge old. I'm 18, by the way, so I'm a huge old head. Huge old head. I love the old guys. I can't stand LeBron, but that's besides the point. The point I'm trying to make is I love all you guys. You guys are great. I love your channels. They're awesome. I just thought that this historical debate was really cool. I personally have Kareem top 3. So, Johnny, you don't have to worry about that. I have Kareem top 3. All right. I'm not underrating him. Love him. But, yeah, I just thought it was great about this whole, second thing, because people want to say LeBron all the time. I can't stand it. I need someone else at number 2. I need someone else. I need, Kareem, Will, Russell. I need someone else.
All right. Well, thank you for calling, Austin.
Of course. Have a great day.
Me too. We got Ray Day here, and we'll have Leon after that, and then we're gonna shut this thing down.
Hey, Doug, Gil ain't trying to grace us with another presence.
Oh, I don't know. I think Robin may have scared him away.
Yo, fellas.
I just want my debate, man, on his
Can you hear me?
channel, whatever he want to do.
Yeah, we can hear
What's up, Ray? Yep.
For some reason, I can't hear on my end.
You can't hear us?
I'll call back. I can't hear anything.
All right. Try to, Yep. All right. We got Leon here. Welcome, Leon. You got a minute to ask a question.
Excellent. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Leon, do you hear me? Yes.
Yep.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, because I was gonna try to switch over to my laptop, if anything. Oh, excellent. All right. So thank you guys for giving me the platform for a second. I want anybody can maybe Scap and the actual host specifically can answer. I don't know, but where do you guys?
I'll just answer.
How do you guys
Scap's
value
answered like
the one-on? Oh yeah. Sure. Excellent. Where do you guys rank? How do you guys utilize the one-on-one, the ability to beat the players on your top 10 or 20 list one-on-one? Because the way I do it is, like, obviously MJ number 1. I have Wilt at 3, Kareem 2, Kobe 4, Magic 5, that sort of thing, right? And I use their achievements, their everything they've done, their skill set and abilities, and then I factor in, all right, one-on-one. Where do we if they battled one another one-on-one, right? Okay. And then I kind of move it around from there. So how do you value one-on-one ability in your rankings?
All right. So for me, I don't really take it into consideration because Michael Jordan versus Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, it happened a couple years. You're playing time machine basketball in that way. I don't like to do it personally. And I mean, just as a generic statement, an all-time great center is going to beat an all-time great smaller guy. It's just like boxing. I don't think it's relevant to their careers or the 5-on-5 aspect of NBA basketball. I think it's fun to talk about, but I don't take that into consideration for my top 10 players of all time. Could George Mikan beat, whatever, Kobe Bryant one-on-one? I don't take that into consideration because you start playing time machine basketball. It's hypothetical. It's fun to talk about, but I think that has a lot less to do with greatness. That's more of talking about, you specifically saying that is who's a better one-on-one player if they face each other. So I don't take that into consideration for my top 10 of all time. All right. You have a minute to respond, sir.
Me? Oh, okay. So I think that's actually fair. The only reason I factor it in is because of conversations where, let's say, like a LeBron James has been known to get cooked one-on-one by a guy. I forget his name, but he's never beaten, like LeBron's never beaten a guy.
Jason.
Yes, like he's got. So my thing is, like, if we're just using, not to beat up LeBron, but just using him as an example of someone who they want to be at the top heap, right? It's like, I personally, I'm like, I can't put you at the top heap if I know on the black top, Michael Beasley's cooking your ass. You get what I'm saying? I can imagine Michael Jordan eking out Wilt in games, and I can imagine Wilt cooking Mike. You know, that's fair. That's fine. I can imagine Kareem doing the same, etc. Like, I can play with the idea of the top 5 cooking each other here and there, but I couldn't consider a guy like, let's say, a LeBron for a top 10 or 20 if Michael Beasley's cooking you one-on-one. That's the only reason why I play in my considerations.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, Leon, for calling in. Appreciate it. We're gonna start shutting this thing down. First off, I want to say thank you, Johnny, for coming on the panel. Special guest. I'd love to have you back in the future if you're interested in it. And get with you in future shows. But I want to save you for last because I want to see if you're down for this. But yeah, let's go down the list. Robin, you have anything you want to say to the people before we get out of here?
Listen, stop asking me if I got anything to say. You know I got something to say. All you got to do is say, yo, Rob, man, you up, man. Let's do it. Just remember that. I love you, dog. You're my boy, man. Once again, man, this was a great show. Thank you for everyone in the chat. I saw someone in the chat say that they unsubscribed from my channel because I said I didn't have Kareem in the top 10. I'll be honest. I don't give a damn. I'm not here for money or fame. Anyone that follows my channel knows that. I stand on the same things I've always stood on. If you guys can remember the premise from the beginning when I said my 2 through 10 is fluid. There is no hard rankings here. And I rank these guys in the top 10 because I think they're worthy to be there. To me, those guys in my top 10 are worthy to be in the top 10 conversation. Wherever they are, 2 through 10 is irrelevant. So for me, Dr. J's worthy to be there. I said Kareem is worthy to be the greatest of all time. I didn't say, how dare someone have Kareem in the top 5 or top 10. I said for me, he's not in my top 10. I'm not saying he's not worthy for a top 10 spot. So let's just clarify at the jump. But as usual, I want to thank everyone in the chat, man. Everyone that has, like I said, supported our channels. You guys donating money. Once again, man, I know money is hard to come by for a lot of people, man. So much respect for anyone to donate any money to our channels. This Sunday live stream is the place to be, man. Remember that. Because once again, man, we're standing on the values, the honor, the integrity, the class. And we love the game, man. And we're not tearing down players on these channels, with false lies and narratives, man. So much respect to everybody out there. Like I said, man, shout out to Nick, my man Hoop God, and my man Scap again for being here, man. You seem that you like to be here, man. You love me, man. Just be honest, man. You know you need my voice in your life. And Johnny, thank you for coming, man. And listen, man, don't be afraid to come back, man. And don't be afraid to have LeBron James number 2. I see what you did today. Because I tell you right the hell now, if you would have put LeBron James number 2 and you'd have came on here today, man, I would have went in on you. Because for me, having LeBron James number 2 all time is worse than me not having Kareem in my top 10, man. That's just my opinion. People can say what they want. That's the fact, man. You guys see the deal, man. Once again, thank you.
All right, Nick, what do you got to say?
That was good. Man, as always, I enjoy it, I like the thing I always say is nobody owns sports, right? This is just all good fun. So I absolutely enjoyed it. I thought everyone had good takes all around. So yeah, nothing more to say other than we'll just keep doing it.
Absolutely. Scap, what do you got to say?
Dart, just thank you so much for having me on again. I do enjoy being here. Thanks to all of you guys, Johnny. It was nice to meet you officially, so to speak, and put a face to the voice, so to speak. And just to follow up on sports real quick, I think it's probably equally of a heinous take to have LeBron at 2 as it is to have Kareem not in your top 10.
That's funny to hear you say all the LeBron videos I see you doing.
All right, Hoop Guy, what do you got to say?
Yeah, man. Once again, another great show. Scap, Johnny, I appreciate you guys coming through. On my side, that's all I've been hearing is like, bro, y'all doing this, man. How y'all get these people? So clearly we're doing something right. Of course, Nick, Sports and Fitness Ran Dark, the original guys. I thoroughly enjoy, hearing people's perspectives, based off their criteria, because I do feel like, when you have a mature panel, we all learn from each other. Because like when I'll hear something, it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know that, right? So I'll try to dot it down. But yeah, man, for the most part, I love talking basketball. Avid sports fan, and y'all know my slogan, man. It's imperative that we destroy these narratives out here. So.
Yeah, real fast, I want to thank everybody for coming to the live chats. Gilbert Arenas came through, and if I'm not mistaken, erroneously said that the ball size was the same throughout all NBA history.
Gil, come back to the panel. We miss you. Come back, Gil.
Gilbert, if you're listening, get me a copy of NCAA 25. That's what I really want. You can get your hands on one
Stop
for
being a
me.
goofy out here, man. Damn, Gilbert Arenas.
Sign it for me. Send it over.
Hey, but seriously, Gil, you're an all-time great, man. We can like talk basketball and we can actually pick your brain. So yeah, man, come on back.
Gilbert Arenas was nice. I was watching live when he dropped 60 on Kobe, and honestly, if he came on, he scored 60, Kobe scored 45. That was one of my favorite games of all time. That's what I'd want to ask him about. So if I'm not here, somebody ask him for me. But yeah, I'd love to talk with Gil. That'd be awesome.
If he does come back, we have to institute the timer, because it got a little too wild. I made a decision to just let it roll, and I think it had its own value, but I don't think it happening again would be good. So
Everybody made content over that live, man. I saw Scap's videos off that. Listen, man, like I said, this is live. This is what we do it live.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, it had its own value. I just don't think it happening every time would be good like that. That's all. But yeah, thanks. Gil showed up, super chat. Ed, Frank, everyone else who super chatted, thank you as well. I got to figure out a hard number for when to stop the show with it. It's just hard. There's so many super chats. If we acknowledged every single one and took a minute, we just couldn't continue the show. But that's a good problem to have. And I want to thank for everybody. I want to thank you all for the super chats. It's gracious to show your appreciation for us. But Johnny, I wanted to ask you if you had any last words, and if you wanted to, if you could say Michael Jordan fans are the best to sign us off as well. But do you have any last words for the people?
I knew you were going to ask that. Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time. I think objective basketball fans are the best. That's my brand, and I'm not going to go away from it. But I do support your channel.
No. I got to go back and say it then.
Anyway, but thank you so much for having me on, guys. It was awesome, and I just love talking basketball that isn't just the same old conversation over and over again. Hearing all the different names that came up, this was really fun. So seriously, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And just for the AOH fans, I don't know what happened with him. He just kept dropping out after a while, but I want to thank AOH and all of his subscribers that were tuning in from his channel. He's always got value added, and we got to see him work out. So that was cool.
He been watching my videos.
Anyway, yeah, thank you everyone for coming again. Thank everyone on the panel once again. I thought it was a great show. And for everyone, Michael Jordan